The low mist, it's Easter time in Belgium. It is indeed the 83rd Tour of Flanders. This is the beautiful city of Bruges. As of last year, the new starting point for a very old classic indeed. And this, the last time we'll see the Tour de Flanders this century. And of course, it brings together all of the best bike riders in the world. Hello again to you all. I'm Phil Liggett, and joining me on the programme, as always, Paul Sherwen. Well, this race is always one to relish. It's always one the bike riders want to win. The man to watch out for, Johan Museeuw. Last year in Paris-Roubaix, he had a bad crash in the forest of Arnhenberg. He almost lost a leg because of that. But he's back to form. He'd love to win this classic again, and the route this year actually goes past his front door. The other man to watch out for is Mappé teammate Michele Bartoli. Bartoli, for the last 2 years, the winner of the World Cup. He wants to win this race, as he did in fact a couple of years ago. And the man they're both going to watch out for, André Schmil. He's now a Belgian. He used to be a Russian. He was a Moldavian. And now he's a naturalised Belgian cyclist. He wants to win now on home roads, and he's already the winner this year of Milan-San Remo. The route itself, well, it's even harder than before, because they've added 3 more climbs this year, and in the last 50 miles of this event, 12 of them happen. So it is always a big finale. Well, Paul Sherwen out early this morning in the marketplace here in Bruges. He's talking to some of the riders we hope to see in the action. Let's go to Paul.
George, I was talking to Frankie Andrea just before the start, and he said my form's not too good, but one man we're looking at today is going to be George Hincapie.
Yeah, the team, made the meeting last night, and they said they wanted to work for me, and I've been feeling good. Flanders, you need a lot of luck, but I feel like I'm riding strong, and hopefully with a bit of luck, I'll be able to be up there today.
These are the races that always motivate you. You're always at the front in Paris-Roubaix and Tour of Flanders. It's a special kind of race where you need the motivation to ride near the front.
Oh yeah, definitely. You got to, if you don't fight every bit to stay in the front, you're 50, 100 guys back, and once you're that far back in the cobblestones, you might never see the front again. So it's really everything to stay up front and get good positions for the cobblestone climbs and just the regular climbs as well. And it's really an all-day battle, and every climb is a little less of a battle because there's less guys to battle with.
But the last 60 kilometers is so intense these days, with all the climbs packed into that last hour and a half of racing, and it really is then a question of survival. You're really racing on your own. Oh
yeah, definitely. But it's like that for everybody. Some teams will have a lot of guys up there, and hopefully we'll have some guys up there as well. But it's basically just the last 60, 70K, like you said, survival, and person with the most energy at the end there is going to be up there.
Henk, it's a typical Tour of Flanders morning. The fog is down here, the cobblestones are going to be wet, and you've obviously got to be a bit nervous.
Oh, for sure. It's always Tour of Flanders day. There's a buzz in the air, and the Belgians, on days like today, they pray for days like today, and we're just got to follow these guys. I mean, they know every turn, left, right, up, down, so we'll be trying to follow the big guns, and that's what I've done in the past. I'll try and do it this year as well.
And it's a special year for you this year because you're the Australian champion for the first time, so it must be great wearing that jersey on European roads.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's the first time we've really had a European pro in that jersey for a long time, and I hope I can just merit it this year. And so far the team's been doing quite well. I've done quite well this year, so we'll try and keep it up there in the classes this week, and especially next week in Paris-Roubaix.
Max, Tour of Flanders again. It's great to get back here to see you. And how's the form this year?
The form is pretty good. Recovered from all my accidents, I'd say. No results on my side so far, but after 11 years of professional, more or less, I mean, a little result can help you for your morale, but the condition's really good. I'm looking forward for today.
You've had a lot of bad luck over the last 18 months with crashes out training, crashes in races, but now this is a great race for you because you know how the race is going to unfold.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really 100% motivated. I mean, if you don't get motivated in these races, then it's time to put your bike up on a nail, So I know the race, of course, changes every year a little bit. The team is very motivated, and hopefully it's a nice wet day, and we'll see what happens.
This is a lot tougher, though, than it used to be a few years ago because all the climbs are now in the last 60 kilometers, and it's always on the rivet towards the end.
Yeah, I mean, from the second feed zone, so from 190 kilometers on, I mean, that's the race. It's just up and down and flat pieces of pavé. I mean, it's Tour of Flanders. That's it.
This is a special race for you. You like this race. You won it a couple of years ago, but you have to have a strong team around you. And Rabobank this year seems to be really on the crest of the wave.
Yeah, it's a strong team that have been coming out the last couple of years, and the young guys are now mature and ready for it. So I think that we are not among the real favorites, but we are just below, and that suits me well. And we can play the game the way I like to do it, and hopefully we can beat the bigger teams.
But in a race like the Tour of Flanders, you have to be a clever rider too, because you have to know exactly what moment to make the moves.
Yeah, first of all, you need to have a lot of or be out of unluck. That's better than luck, I would say. And of course, to make the right move, you have to have the right legs. That makes everything so much easier. And yeah, then tactically, you have to be in a good position, because there is a lot of tactic even in a race hard like this, because Mappé's are a lot of good riders in the front. Lotto has a lot of riders, and Van den Broeke with his team, they're riding good. So you have to kind of watch the moments and see when it's time to go. And you would never know it before, because you have to take the decision in the race.
Well, we'll watch you.
I will be there.
Rolf Sorensen certainly a good man to watch, but what about the winner of Het Volk? He was the next man I tracked down right in the starting area. Frank van den Broeke, now starting to be a rising star in Belgium. Frank, the Tour of Flanders is always a special day for the Belgians, but for all the other riders too. It's an extraordinary day. It's almost our World Championships. There's a lot of pressure for the Belgian riders, but for a lot of the other international riders too. And the climbs are all together at the end. It's a very special race. That's what gives Tour of Flanders its charm. You've got to go to the first climbs in the front, because if you lose out in the first climbs, it's a chasing day for the rest of the race. This year it's a little bit different for Frank van den Broeke, because last year with Mappé, this year you're the lone leader with Cofidis. It's perfect for me. I've got the whole team working for me. That's what I've been looking for. For the moment since the start of the year, it's been great.
And in fact, Van den Broeke, of course, starting his year great indeed, because he's won Het Volk and he's also had a couple of smaller wins as well. There's Andrea Taffy, a quick glimpse there in his Championship of Italy jersey. Johan Museeuw now back to form, and he has to be said, Paul, as he shakes hands there with Peter van Petegem, that he is still a favourite, and he looks as though he's refining his form.
And his big challenge might come from his teammate Michele Bartoli, who always rides well when he comes up here to Belgium, and he too made the switch this winter to come across to the Mappé squad. Mappé, I think today, Phil, are going to be very difficult to beat.
And a lot of riders will feel that this is their World Championship, because everybody of all the classic races, I think, they really do want to be the winner of the Tour of Flanders. This is the 83rd edition of this great race. 189 riders on the rollout, a massive crowd waving them off here in Bruges, this beautiful city of lace. And now they're going the long way to Ninove and the small principality of Ninove, Meerbeker.
Well, Johan Museeuw, in fact, didn't want to talk to me before the start this morning, Phil. Very nervous and upset about what's happened in Belgium this last week, because on the third stage of the 3 days of Le Panne, in fact, the police stopped the race and took away the whole of the Mappé team to question them about a suspect parcel that was found. Somebody was trying to send by DHL from the Mappé team hotel to Italy. And in fact, the parcel contained amphetamines. But it was proven after interrogation that it had nothing to do with any of the riders in the team. And it was sent by one of the masseurs to a contact in Italy. So Johan Museeuw very upset about what's happened this week, and I think today the fact that he wouldn't talk to me, and I've known him for many years now, I think he's going to be out to try and prove something out on the course.
Well, he's proving something right now, Frank van den Broeke, because he's part of this breakaway, and there's some 24 riders here, around about 101 kilometres still to go in the 83rd Tour of Flanders, a race of 270. And also in this breakaway, we're delighted to say, is George Hincapie from US Postal marking his man, and Christian van der Velde.
Christian van der Velde's dad's going to be very happy, John van der Velde, that his son has got up here, because the van der Veldes, although they hail from just outside Chicago now, in fact are of Belgian origin. So Christian van der Velde to the front there now in a World Cup race, and his dad will be quite chuffed to see him up there riding well.
But this is a strange breakaway, Paul. There's really only Van den Broek and George Hincapie of any note of likely winners of this year's Tour of Flanders, I would say, in this break. 71, by the way, is not Van den Broek. That's Steve de Wolf carrying the team leader's number today for Cofidis. I'm a bit surprised to see that this group has been allowed to get away, and I'm just wondering why Van den Broek has made such an early move here.
There's Philippe Gaumont just going out of the picture there. Another good lieutenant this year for Frank van den Broek. And I'm surprised to see that they've put so much effort into that move, because really this is the kind of move that Van den Broek should be in but not actually contributing to. And early on he had his team putting big pressure on this group to try and get them clear. They're now coming into the area where they're going to start to get very repetitive climbs, and the next climb of the day for these guys is going to be the Mont de l'Enclos. That in fact is not a cobble climb, it's a tarmac climb, but still a very difficult one. And you can see Van den Broek obviously quite excited to be in this group, because he's got his men at the front. They're keeping the pressure high.
Well, there's plenty of pressure too, and this is really, and there's Van den Broek, is really an interesting move this. He could well shatter this field very early on and throw a lot of team tactics out of the window. As they get into these narrow roads, this is a much more manageable size group than the big field, which isn't too far behind at the moment. The last time check we got was 1 minute and 45 seconds back to the main field. The lead of the World Cup, by the way, is Andre Schmil, the Lotto man, after his great victory in Milan-San Remo. This is round number 2 of the World Cup. And Schmil, the winner there, jumping away from the sprinters when in sight of the line down in San Remo rather. He got the better of Eric Zabel, who was trying for his 3rd consecutive win at Milan-San Remo.
Superbly timed sprint by him. We're on a section of cobblestones here, the Curt 3 kilometers long, and you can see it's always the Cofidis team coming to the front, trying to consolidate the advantage this group of riders has over the main field. And race radio telling us in fact that the main field is being led very consistently by Team Mappé, the team of Johan Museeuw, who looked very confident, if not quiet this morning, about the possibility of riding a race that he regards his own. And the group now, in fact, starting to close down, Phil. It was, in fact, it's going out 105 slightly up to 125.
Yeah, slightly getting better again. They were coming back, and they've gone away again now. And this is interesting. They're just playing the big group. It is a large group with a lot of teams here who will feel they're in the wrong position. It would be the group they want the leaders in, rather than want the domestiques in. 123 kilometers left to go.
There's Hincapie wearing the stars and stripes of the champion of the United States of America, a title he garnered in Philadelphia last year. In fact, it was the 2nd time that he's been the national champion, but the first time he was disqualified after a long debate by the referees concerning some pacing after a flat tire. But it's great to see George wearing that jersey now, and I think he's very proud to be able to show that off on the roads of Belgium in the Tour of Flanders, a World Cup race that he really feels very close to. He certainly is developing into a man who is successful not only in the Tour of Flanders but also in Paris-Roubaix, and earlier this season got a great performance in Milan-San Remo where he finished 9th.
That was superb, and it was in a packed sprint as well, and that was a great race in the final kilometres. Even Marco Pantani attempted to destroy the field near the end on the Cipressa. So there's George sitting right there on the tail of the line, and he's sitting on the wheel of Wim Face, who again is riding well, Paul. Remember, he was showing form in Volk and finished, I think it was 9th in the end in that event.
This is the chaos of races in Belgium here. This sign telling us there are 13 climbs still to go in this race, so we've hardly started really in earnest the difficult strategic parts of the race. And in Belgium it's actually illegal to ride on the footpaths, but everybody here is fighting to try and find a slightly more comfortable ride, because these cobblestone sections in the Tour of Flanders really do wear everybody down.
Famous, of course, for its little bergs, the little hills of Flanders. There are 16 of them on the course today. We are still expecting to see 13 of them here on our screens as the riders make their way slowly but surely around to the province of Ninove and the little Finnish town of Mierbeke. And this breakaway, Paul, is a little bit disorganised now. They're not really working very well indeed.
Well, unfortunately, the breakaway is too big, and everybody wants to take a back seat and let certain riders go to the front. There is Bart Leijzen, one of the good riders on the Mappé squad, an excellent worker in a race like this. He won't contribute too much to the success because, in fact, none of the big Mappé names have made it into this group so far. Obviously, today we must think about Michele Bartoli and Johan Museeuw, who is looking to try and put a good performance in. Interestingly enough, Museeuw said in the week, asked whether he felt he could hold the role of a leader for the team, to be a protected rider. He said, if asked when he was going to be of service to Michele Bartoli, he said, "I cannot be in a domestique in a race that I've already won twice before."
I think one can understand that, but Museo has never been a domestique, has never wanted to put his weight behind helping someone else win. He has been an out-and-out winner, as we've seen in the Paris-Roubaix in the recent past as well.
There's Van den Broek coming to the bottom of the Molenberg in 3 kilometers time, and right alongside him is one of his teammates there just encouraging him. The Molenberg, a very difficult climb, came towards the end of the race Het Volk, which was towards the end of February, and it is the kind of climb where a man like Frank Van den Broek can split this group, and if he can reduce it to a slightly smaller size, then it might be more manageable. But for the moment, complete disorganization with various riders coming to the front, putting the pressure on, then going to the back again.
The group going through. Steve de Wolf here on the Cofidis team, being tracked through there by Stefan de Jong, a former rider as an amateur, won a stage in the Commonwealth Bank Classic. We saw him win there in Terrigal on the central coast in New South Wales once.
Interesting to note that in fact Mapei have been very clever in putting one of their top riders up here, because I just caught a glimpse there of Stefano Zanini, who himself a former leader of the World Cup last year, has slipped into this group, and he will not be contributing too much to the success of the breakaway, especially now the acceleration for the bottom of the Molenberg. In third position there is Frank Van den Broek, realizing you've got to go around these corners in third or fourth place to make sure that you're not involved in any accidents.
And there's the gradient for you. It goes up to a maximum of 18%, and it looks like somebody's fallen off on that bend, Paul.
Well, I think it was Van den Broek. He went across there in third or fourth. There's Gaumont there in second position. As they came round the corner from the helicopter, it was a red and white blue jersey of Cofidis, so Van den Broek is on the ground.
So Van den Broek has gone down here, and we saw it from the helicopter. Sadly, with no camera by the situation, our camera's gone up at the head of the riders as they race for that corner. Again, Van den Broek is proving to us he's not a great bike handler at all. When the going gets tough, he's gone down. But the riders here now are beginning to find the Molenberg a little bit tough on the ascent.
Well, this is the chaos at the back of the group. Let's just have a look at that again there, Phil. You can see Van den Broek coming round there in third place, the front wheel going away from him, and he went down very hard indeed. He had a perfect lead out into the corner, came into it third, but he just lost it on those slippery cobbles.
So Van den Broek has gone down, and Stefan de Jong, I think, here is making the pace at the front, followed by Philippe Gaumont.
Well, that was a tricky move, taking your hands off there. It's a good job they came back on top of the handlebars. Van den Broek is up, according to Race Radio, and riding his bike again, but a little shaken by that crash.
Shaken but not stirred, Paul. And he certainly lost it on the cobbles, though. It'll be a painful descent to the stones, I would think, as the TVM riders Jong and Philippe Gaumont probably heard the clatter but didn't even look round.
Philippe Gaumont looking round now, though. Phil, he's sitting up. He realises there's been a crash, and he obviously has got the information that it's Van den Broek. So he's going to sit up and wait to find out exactly where Van den Broek is and try and pace him back into this group. And I think that now will probably announce the end to this breakaway success, because it's starting to fall apart. And looking back down the long line there of riders, I can't see. There's Van den Broek now, just at the back of that group. He's got another teammate in there as well. So shortly, he'll get paced back into the race by Gaumont, who sat up and waited for him.
And there's de Wolf waiting at the back of the tail there, as the field continues on without the same impetus now, because there's no real driver in this breakaway. There's the lone figure. No, that's actually the one of the Tony Steiner riders we saw drop. That'll be Frankie de Boist. And looking right down these narrow roads, Paul, the gap is still there despite everything over the top of the Molenberg. We're heading towards the area around Zottegem now. Narrow streets as we try to find what is left of the race here. Looking back down into the crowd, they pack the corners, ready to dive to the cars and go and find themselves another little piece of hill elsewhere on the race route. Here comes what is now the advanced party of the main group. It's 113 kilometres to finish. Plenty of time, Paul, for this race to change its pattern yet.
Definitely a lot of change can happen in the last 100 and so kilometres, and I would think they will start to lose a bit of impetus with that accident to Frank Van den Broek. But the great ride here is being done by George Hincapie. Hincapie is being very attentive. He's looking for the moves. He's joined in this breakaway by Stefano Zanini, the Mapei rider there, but also the champion of Estonia there, wearing number 31, Jan Kursipu, who rides for the Casino squad, and he's already had a very good season so far.
He gets a lot of wins, but he really needs one big win to give them all credibility. He's a great sprinter and he wins a lot of bike races, but now he's got himself into the break here in the Tour of Flanders, and Andreas Clear is in there as well for TVM. They're trying to get away and break up this really unmanageable large group of some 20-odd riders, and the main field is now just over a minute behind them, containing, as far as we know, all the men that matter, apart of course from Frank Van den Broek.
It's interesting to note that Van den Broek was so nervous that he actually went into an early move like this. You would expect a rider who is looking at a chance of victory in a race like the Tour of Flanders to sit back and keep his eye on the more experienced men like Johan Museeuw, who hasn't been to the front of the event so far. Curt there just going through. He's already had 5 victories so far this year. Started very early on with 2 big wins in the Étoile de Bessèges, but Zanini is being very attentive. This is the kind of move that could smile on a man like Stefano Zanini, because he too is the kind of rider who, one of the Mappe guys who's got a chance of victory if this group stays clear, because at the moment their advantage is still hovering around the 1.5 minute margin, and you can see the rest of that group now recovering, trying to pull them back into the fold, and stirred up at the front of that group, obviously, I think, by Team Cofidis.
Well, it's been rather an impish move, this, by Van den Broek, to go out with a bunch of riders you wouldn't expect to be leading the race at this stage, as that's still number 73 there, Philippe Gaumont, trying to reorganise it. There is the man, Frank Van den Broek. He doesn't look much the worse for wear, but you know, he must have fallen off in training and racing at least 4 times this year.
Well, he normally is a pretty good bike handler. It may well be the fact he's taking too many risks at the moment to get round those corners in the first 3 or 4 places. Looking at his bike there, looking at his body, we can't see any scars, or it doesn't look as if he's hurt himself too much. But I tell you one thing, when you do fall off on the cobbles, it seems to be a lot harder than normal tarmac road.
I can understand that, and you don't slide on them either. You just go splat and lie there, unfortunately, because there's no smooth surface of the cobbles. Curt then, just off the picture to our right, in that black, white and blue jersey of champion of Estonia. And a total of almost 50 bike races won since he turned professional.
Interesting to see one of the Spanish riders in this group, Ruben Galvan from the Kelme squad, in the light green and white strip there, moving to the back.
Kelme might be some sort of a record, that, Paul.
Yeah. The Spanish guys don't normally like to come up here to Belgium, so to get into an early breakaway like this, it'll give them a chance to see some of these tough cobblestones. The Kelme team, the team that's been in professional cycling for the longest, is much more at home in the hilly events of Spain and the longer stage races. But Cofidis, Phil, taking this breakaway very seriously indeed.
Again, Bart Leijzen third around the corner. And then I think it was Christian van der Velde. There's Georgie Hincapie down there. Sensibly just waiting to see how this race develops, because the time gap is not going up and they are not pulling away from the field. So he might be a bit silly to just do too much work at this stage with such a long way still to go. And of course, all of the real serious climbs still to come.
And also Van den Broek really sacrificing his 2 teammates there, because he's got them on the front stirring this up, and really he needs men towards the end of the race. That was his problem, although it wasn't much of a problem because he went on to win Het Volk, but at the end of the race he was very much isolated. He had no teammates with him and had to ride on his own, and he should really be saving them for the latter part of this race, because we're still looking at 2.5 hours of racing left to go.
111 kilometres still ahead of these riders. That's a long way. That's over 70, or just on 70 miles of cycling. The Cofidis boys have had their fair share of trouble here, and I'm not sure whether Van den Broek is wasting his time, but we'll find out. At least he's in the best position to see what happens now. As this group, it was 24 riders. It may have lost 1 or 2. The gap is still nosing ahead slightly. It's gone up to 1:32 now, and largely because of the work here being done by his teammates. Little stretch of bad road coming up here at Robust, and then we'll head on through Zottegem down to Zwaam to Oudenaarde, and then we'll be looking for the next climb, which will be the Klausberg.
Well, Gaumont on the front here, leading him onto another section of cobblestones. And he's gone down as well.
Well, that's amazing. He's gone round the corner. He must have hit a wet patch or something, but Gaumont has gone there, and I don't think he was getting up either as he went down. Oh, he is up. So that's twice now Cofidis have tried to destroy this breakaway. I don't understand. They're just getting too enthusiastic for the corners, Paul. They're taking no caution at all.
Well, it could be. In fact, Gaumont looks as if he's hurt himself there. The bike is up. He's repairing it, but in fact
it's his ankle, I think.
He doesn't look too happy about that at all. What could be happening here is the mechanics got overzealous this morning and has got the tyres pumped up too hard, because it's amazing that both Van den Broek and Gaumont went down. He comes into that corner. It's not all that slippy at all. You can see there he looks quite comfortable, and the tyres just come from underneath him, and that indicates to me that maybe they've got too much pressure.
He certainly wasn't expecting to fall, judging by the way he was looking as he went around that corner, so he just lost it completely, and it was a bit of a shock to him, which is usually presents you with the worst type of fall because you're not prepared for the crash. But from what we can hear, he is not rejoined the race, so it looks like Philippe Gaumont, the strong man, the lieutenant of Frankie Van den Broek in this breakaway, is out of the race.
Well, race radio telling us at the moment that he's still at the side of the road. He's still, in fact, holding on to his wrist as well. So it looks as if he did fall very hard indeed at the side of the road there. Emmanuel Magnan is the Française de Jeu rider just across there, a former French cyclo-cross champion. He's also an excellent sprinter, the kind of man who, if he could stay clear in a group like this, would be looking for a victory towards the end. And it's been a long time since the French have won this race. You have to go back to Jackie Durand, who made that long, lone breakaway to win the Tour of Flanders, and Durand not on the start line this morning, hoping to ride, but was unable to because of a recent injury.
Now the riders are being visited by the team cars here. Here's the winners over recent years. Johan Museeuw started off with such a great season last year with victory again in this event. He also won it in 95 and 93. He's had a host of seconds and thirds as well on top of that. But now coming back from injury and a big question mark, although he has won recently. He won Kuurne, Brussels, Kuurne, but now the gap has completely thundered down. 25 seconds is all it is now. We're going to see some new names up here very soon, and we're not at the Klausberger yet.
That's an awful lot has got to do with the fact that this group has lost Philippe Gaumont, who was a big driving force for Frank van den Broeke on the front of this group, and that's why I think it's going to come back, and that will be good, I think, in the long run for a man like van den Broeke, because he could lose and use an awful lot of energy in a breakaway like this. Stefano Zanini here, number 8, looking very calm and collected, very happy to be here, not putting any pressure in though. You see how sensible he is. He's riding to the front of the group but never actually putting his face in the wind, because he knows that the Tour of Flanders is won in the last 50 kilometres.
On the rear from Vino Calrola there is Gianluca Cerrone. He's just third wheel at the moment. This is Bart Lazen, another good workhorse on the Mapei team, rarely a winner but an excellent domestique. Now the camera's pulling down. It must be bad news for the breakaway, and it most certainly is, because a long thin line of riders here have got their tails up now. They smelt the capture of this breakaway, and they're going to bring back Frank van den Broeke, and it looks as though we've got an attack. It might be Magnus, it's one of the Agricole riders, Eros Poli.
Eros Poli, it is, the big long Longeline figure of the Australian Italian. Although he lives in Italy, his wife comes from Australia. He speaks very good English indeed, and he was in that early breakaway of 24 riders trying to slip off the front there before the capture happens. A man with great tactical knowledge, no great victories to his career because he's spent most of his life actually working for other people, but in fact he did get a magnificent stage victory in the Tour de France a couple of years ago when he built up a lead of around about half an hour before he had to climb over the Mont Ventoux and got caught on the and managed to stay clear towards the finish.
They never caught him, and he said the reason for the long escape was he wanted to look at all the beautiful women watching the race go past, and it succeeded. He saw both, and he also got the victory. Very nice too. He's a good guy. He
certainly is one of the nice guys of professional cycling, and when it comes down to working for the team, he's another guy who goes to the front and really puts his heart into it.
It was back at Carpentras back in 1994. Time flies by.
Vlaanderen 2002, the farm team for the professional squads of Belgium. Chris Gerrits going off the front, hoping to try and get some advance. This team very well supported by Eddy Merckx, who is a big supporter of the advancement of professional cycling. This is how he jumped off the front a little early, and you can see Stefano Zanini there just had a quick look and thought, I'm not going to waste too much energy with this guy, I'm going to wait till a bit later on.
Well, Gerrits trying to go clear here because that bunch is virtually caught now, and so these riders are trying to get away from it in the hope that they can go clear again when the main field comes up, and their traction for the moment is just to keep Van den Broeke back in the pack.
Gerrits got a slight advantage, but they don't let people ride off the front too easily like that, and you can see the big reaction now coming from the new Lampre squad, which was a great team a couple of years ago and has been reconstituted again this year with a splinter group coming away from the former Mapei riders, and they've set up again, and it's all to do with the politics of the sport in Italy.
So Poli's gone across, Bart Lazen's gone across, and also the Cantina rider there is Germano Pierdomenico, and a rider I've never heard of. He's also gone across to that lead group as well.
Well, they still haven't nailed it back completely. The group swelling across the big main road here, the pressure on the front being shared between not only TVM but Mapei, always keeping a guy at the front there. The gap still hovering at 30 seconds.
Yeah.
They haven't managed to nail it back completely, but you can see the impetus has gone out of that group as they spread across the road, and it's little attacks coming off the front one at a time.
That's now TVM boy is now having a go to try and get clear. Well, it must be Stefan de Jong, I think, who's trying to break away from the field, who was leading up the previous climb on the Molenberg. And he could do with some help because there's an awful long way to go, still in excess of 100 kilometres. It is Stephen de Jong who's gone clear. Big gear he's hauling down this main highway, but it's not a great highway to attack on because the race can see him all the way down it as we head off towards Oudenaarde and the next climb.
Stefan de Jong, another rider we've seen an awful lot of in Australia. There's a big race towards the end of the season there, the Commonwealth Bank Cycle Classic. And many of these Dutch guys go out there and although they don't ride too well in the overall standings, there's a lot of criterium races, and these Dutchmen, they really dominate those. And Stefan de Jong has won a couple of stages down there and has always performed well in the Southern Hemisphere.
Used to be a regular on the Dutch squad there with Servaes Knaven, and now they're both on the same pro team, TVM.
Kop van der Weekstride, the head of the race. This is for Stephen de Jong. Huge gear. He's trying to get as big a gear as possible turning round there. This is a very flat part of the course, but it is windy out here in Belgium today, and on the first part of the course the main field was keeping very close together until that early group of 24 riders shot off, and surprisingly enough had Frank van den Broek for company. An interesting move by Van den Broek. He was obviously in the right place at the right time, because I'm sure he wouldn't have wanted to be in an early move like that, realizing that this is a very difficult race with at least 12 of the climbs of 16 all cramped together in the final 60 kilometers.
Yeah, right. And now de Jong turns off the course, so we're altering course now for the next climb of the day. And de Jong has the form. He won a stage in Tirreno Adriatico not very long ago, and since he turned pro back in 1996, Paul, he's managed to pick up 11 victories, so that's not a bad list of honours for so far. There's the flags of Flandria flying now, but I'm afraid they're waving at a Dutchman as he heads out towards the climbs again.
There's a lot of riders here trying to survive before they get to the foot of the next climb of the day. There's big Eros Poli in the green shorts there, and right behind him, wearing number 12, is Fabian Douala from the Lotto squad. And tucked onto the back, one of the Tonnesteiner riders, number 242, is Frankie de Boost. They're hoping to survive before the next climb, because there'll then be a big onslaught from the main field behind, and I'm sure that as we get onto the slopes of this climb, it'll all come back together and we'll see the big names of the main field starting to come to the front of the race, because very shortly we'll be looking at the climb of the Old Quaremont, and that for me is always the first strategic climb of the race. It's not a race where it's not a climb where you actually win the race, but if you're too far back, it can be a big long chase to get yourself back to the front of affairs.
Christian van der Velde driving it for US Postal here. It looks like we have the coming together of around 10 now from the original 24, and I presume the rest are almost in the capture now of the main peloton. And this is the main peloton here now, looking very determined indeed. Plenty of pacemaking being done at the front. The riders come through here one by one. There's Stuart O'Grady, still continuing a good season with some good form, but he's been at the top of his form really since January because of the Tour Down Under back in his home city of Adelaide.
Well, talking to Stuart, the plan for him this season was to be on tip-top condition for the Tour Down Under. Obviously in his hometown he wanted to get down there and put a good performance, and you can't do much better than winning the inaugural event. And his plan then is to take a bit of a break after the classics and build himself back up again for the Tour de France. At the moment he's riding exceptionally well here. This is the kind of event that suits him very well indeed. And another attack coming from US Postal Service. They're obviously really on form at the moment. Now this is the Luxembourg rider on the squad, Benoit Joachim, who's trying to get off the front here. And I think these US Postal team this year have come to the classics with a much different morale. They're looking now to try and win. They're looking to try and place George Hincapie into an ideal position, because I feel that George has got a great chance of putting in a top ride here in the Tour of Flanders today, because he's in form and the team are around him.
Mark Wouters, Rabobank, is also trying to get in on the action too, because these are now the emissaries from what is the main field, beginning to take an interest in the race. There's another one on his way up as well. Didn't quite get a snack. Oh, there we are. And that rider there, number 107, is Frank Hotz from the Swiss member of the Festina Lotus team. The Festina squad having changed the colours slightly this year, having lost a lot of their image, of course, after the scandal of last year's Tour de France. The team itself heavily rebuilt over the winter, with most of the names involved from the Tour de France all being transferred to other teams.
These riders now on the slopes of the Mont de l'Enclos, as it's called in French, the Klausberg. 77 kilometers left to go to the finish, and this is a very difficult part, I always think, Phil, because in around about 20 kilometers there are 4 very difficult climbs. This is the first one of the series, immediately followed by a climb called the Notterberg, And then the quick descent. There's Chris Horner, in fact, dropping out of the back there. Horner, I feel, is starting to fit into the professional scene now, riding a lot better than he was last year, getting used to the European foods. And
he's a man with a lot of talent.
He certainly is.
Chris Horner.
He's tried to change his attitude to that, and much more of a European, and I think he should try and just enjoy himself and relax a little bit more, because this kid has got a real explosive attack.
Well, he's going to need it now, because the pace is really beginning to hot up now. This rider here is Mirko Crepaldi from Polti. Huge crowds yet again for the Tour of Flanders. This event seemingly gets more and more popular over recent years. It certainly gets a lot more publicity now, and the organisation has lifted itself a little bit now to match the modern era. They don't just allow it to happen anymore. You actually see the race now has a little bit of flair about it, and of course the image is building, so the riders want to succeed in it, as it is Frans Holtz from Festina setting the pace now at the front as they come over the top of the Klausberg.
The next climb will be that it's a very quick descent down here, and shortly they'll be turning towards the left and heading up towards the Notterberg, which is not a great climb, but unfortunately for these guys it comes up and turns onto the main road opposite the summit of the Old Quaremont. A great place to go in Belgium if you want to see the Tour of Flanders come by twice in about 20 minutes. And you can see everybody trying to recover, moving up around the outside, because the Notterberg is a very narrow climb, and if you're not in the first 4 or 5, you get stuck at the back, and if you have any kind of a problem, then you're really fighting to try and get yourself into good position for the Old Quaremont. But this field now has all come back together, and you can see there's a lot of riders still in with a chance at this stage of the Tour of Flanders, and I don't think, Phil, I've ever seen so many riders still together with 75 kilometers left to go.
But all of the hills, Paul, and there they are. Another 11 hills and 7 stretches of pavé is what that sign meant on the left-hand corner of our screen. 11 climbs still to come, and the next one will be the Knokteberg.
Again, you can see that US Postal Service putting their men up into the move, and again it's Benoit Joachim from Luxembourg. Nice to see the Italian champion coming to the front too. Today I think Andrea Tafi thinking much more about his team role. He's trying to make sure that they can put their man Johan Museeuw into an ideal position as well, not forgetting Michele Bartoli, who we haven't seen too much of so far in the race, but he's definitely got the form this year to try and pull off a second win for him in the Tour of Flanders. He's a great rider when it comes to riding these northern classics, and most of his great performances have actually been done in Belgium, or at least in the northern part of France as well.
So Andrea Tafi, champion of Italy, riding the jersey with pride this year. Doing a lot of work, which indicates to us, although we haven't seen Bartoli or recently Museeuw either, they must be in this group, otherwise Tafi wouldn't be working hard on the front.
And there is the big shape of the man of the moment as well, Wilfred Peters. Wilfred Peters, a great domestique on the Mapei squad, a man that I think many of the top teams in the world would like to have in their field, in their squad, because he is just the kind of guy who doesn't think about any personal performance at all. He's just trying to work for himself, and there's a couple of Mapei riders moving to the front there, and I would think one of those is going to be Johan Museeuw, because that man certainly has got the form at the moment. He came very close to a victory in Kuurne-Brussels-Kuurne a couple of months ago, just after the race Het Volk, and he finished second there in a big sprint finish.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Paul. In fact, I think I said earlier he won that race, but you're quite right, he did finish second. And that won't be good enough, of course, for Johan Museeuw, because he is a winner, very much so. But let's not forget also that he is now 33 years of age, and he's not getting any younger to recover from those knocks he's had last year. But he's looking good right now. Tafi doing a marvellous job here of pacemaking. The field has generally regrouped, and we've got round about 80 riders in this pack.
Wilfred Peters on the front now. There's Michele Bartoli for the first time coming to the front of this Tour of Flanders. And alongside him there, the young prodigal son of Belgium, Frank van den Broeke, in the red and white jersey of Cofidis. On the right-hand side, another Cofidis rider moving forward, that's Peter Farazijn. He came across from Lotto to ride on the Cofidis squad with Frank van den Broeke, specifically to help him in the one-day classics.
Well, the hard work by Tafi then, who's not evident now. He slipped right back from here. It's been worth it, because Peters has brought Bartoli up. And as these races now go into a fast series of climbs, obviously the safest place to be is at the front, and if you've got a domestique like Wilfred Peters able to get you up there and keep you up there, then that's why you pay him the big bucks, I suppose. But Wilfred Peters, who did this, remember, in Het Volk this year, and then he managed to go away with the winner, and he almost pulled off the victory as well.
He's a big, strong boy, I have to tell you. I'm surprised to see him riding so well here on the slopes of the Notterberg. But you get a chance to see just how difficult these climbs are. The road, very narrow as well. And if you are caught at the back, it's almost impossible to drag yourself to the front of this group. Van den Broek now riding sensibly on the left-hand side there, right on the shoulder of Michele Bartoli, who's using a nice small gear, not putting too much pressure on his thighs at the moment, making sure that he's at the front, out of danger, but not putting in too much energy, because these riders now realise we're coming into the crucial part of the Tour of Flanders, and from now on there's a climb almost every 10 kilometres all the way to the finish.
So Peters brings them safely over the top, with the Cofidis boys right behind him there. But you see how narrow this road is. The riders at the back are under pressure. There's Andre Schmil in that white jersey as the first leader of the World Cup this year, with victory in Milan-San Remo. Also paying close attention, and well he might, because he's always had a great deal of success in the Tour of Flanders. There he is, Andre Schmil. Time for a little bit of food.
And there's in fact Johan Museeuw moving up as well to the front, number 3. The man who's won this race 3 times in the past. And Stefano Zanini coming shooting to the front now. They want to keep the pressure high now, because they've seen that there are 3 or 4 Mapei riders, important Mapei riders, in the right position. So Zanini's going to keep the pressure high, because over to the right-hand side there, you can, in fact, if they looked across, they could see the summit of the Old Quaremont. And what they want to do now is keep those riders to the front, because the Old Quaremont is a very difficult climb. Not so steep at the bottom, but it's the top part of the climb when it levels out and goes across through the fields, still on cobblestones, that makes it, for me, a very difficult, decisive climb. If you have a moment of weakness there, you can get blown away and lose 45 seconds.
And they're racing really, they're going down a steep descent here. It's around 1 in 10 or 10% as they head towards the Old Quaremont, which is now just on 3 kilometres away. And you can see the changing and the movement in the pack there now as the riders fight to hold their places, especially near the front before they turn onto the Quaremont. These are tense moments for the riders now, who've got real intent, because they know that the leaders will have all of the advantage on the steep climb. Taffy's still in there, pick him out with his green top to his Italian Championship jersey. The white jersey still in there too, of Andre Schmil. Schmil, by the way, has finished 3rd in this race. I think it's 3 occasions. He's also had a 4th and a 6th, but he's never had the big one. He's never actually won it. And this year will be a great year to win it, because of course it will give him a clear lead in the World Cup.
Well, the Notterberg, in fact, has had a fair impact on that climb there, on the size of the main field, because that's been reduced. But now it's the grey jerseys coming to the front of TVM. Obviously, they're trying to move Peter van Petegem to the front for this climb. Now, this is a very fast approach to the Old Quaremont, because once you hit a specific white house, which every one of these riders knows, you're right on the foot of the climb and you can't move forward anymore. 2.2 kilometres long and 10% at the highest part.
So the steep descent they just made, they're going to go up, but of course this is more cobbled and it's quite a nasty little climb. Goes into a quiet, peaceful square, but it won't be quiet and peaceful today when the riders crash through with all the people waiting up there. And TVM have got themselves on the front and are managing to control the race here now. Peter van Petegem, again their top rider, in 2 wins in Het Volk, and was up there with the decisive move this year, but didn't get the win.
Orange jersey of Rabobank moving to the front there, looks like the shape of Rolf Sorensen as well. But they've done a great job, TVM, there, because this is the part of the Old Quaremont where you can no longer move up. It's only wide enough for about 4 bike riders' width. And at the back there, a lot of riders just tailing off. The 7th climb of the day. In fact, our man of the back there from Lampre just to flick around one of the spectators at the side of the road. Tristan Hoffmann very close to the front, keeping the pressure on. It is, in fact, Sorensen moving up to the right-hand side.
Yeah, Sorensen's been paying attention for quite a few kilometres now. Well, he told Paul at the start he would be in the move. Well, there's no better place to be at this stage. You have to be very strong to hold the position at the front. It's the racing done before the climb which actually causes the pain. Now they've got the positions, they're on the climb itself.
It's the acceleration over the top that makes this a very difficult climb. You climb up almost the whole amount of the climb in the first 300 metres, and then it's a long drag up for 1.5 kilometres over the top on cobblestones. Now the riders on the cobblestones, Sorensen on the right-hand side, but leading them up now, Tristan Hoffmann, with the bands there on his sleeves. You can see a former champion of Holland, red, white and blue. And somebody slipping back very rapidly through the main field. I got a glimpse of George Hincapie in about 15th place. So Hincapie looking good, looking comfortable. And there you can see him right on the wheel there of Andre Schmil.
Nice position to be for George. Got the right wheel to follow, I think. It's a shame the helicopter makes the appearance that this is a flat road, but believe me, it is really tough, and there's no respite from the cobbles because the crowd are standing on the bit of dirt road that exists on the shoulder there. But anyway, Tristan Hoffmann has kept himself a very, very good rhythm over the top. He's being trailed by Rolf Sorensen, another man for the classics, the Dane, sitting on the back of his wheel there as we swing quickly to the back of the group and see Fabian de Voller. But Lotto looks to be the last man on the climb at the moment. Hoffmann, though, really concentrating here, and as Sorensen goes by him, and Sorensen looking very good now, Paul.
Sorensen looking relaxed. He knows this climb. He knows that this is an important strategic point of the whole Tour of Flanders. Very often what happens here, this is the top of the steep part, but now we've still got around about 1.5 kilometers of cobblestones, and this is the chaos at the back. Arnaud Preto is really just surviving on the steep part of the Old Quaremont still at the moment. Once you get to the top, you put the hammer down, you change into a big gear and accelerate, is exactly what our man on the front here, Rolf Sorensen, is doing now. He's hoping to split the race apart, hoping to launch 20 or 30 riders clear from the group that started at the bottom of this climb, and he's using the motorbike to his advantage at the moment. You see sitting right on the wheel, and a bit further back there, wearing 78, is the man all Belgium would like to win today, Frank van den Broek.
And we're going to have to try and cool down the pace being set by the 1997 winner of this race at the moment, Rolf Sorensen, as he keeps the pressure on the front. And the Old Quaremont has had a little bit of a say in this year's classic, I think, because it's put a lot of splits in the field here. The tempo, first of all, started by Tristan Hoffmann, now continued by Sorensen, who looks over his shoulder to see what damage the pacemaking has done, and he's getting himself a group of 6 riders clear.
Well, Sorensen will be happy about that. That's exactly what he wanted to do. He knew when he needed to move to the front. Just as soon as they reached the summit of the steep part of the Old Quaremont and it started to level out, he put it in the big gear, accelerated, and you can see the damage that it's done to the main field of what was around about 70 men at the bottom of this climb. But this climb drags on and on up to the main road at the top, and there they will take a right-hand turn and head down towards Ronde. Hincapie there, still in with the action. Alongside him, it looks as if that's Peter Farazijn is riding very strongly indeed, and Hincapie really showing off the American flag well.
He's coming up to that lead group, in fact, George Hincapie at the moment, with a good piece of riding, so he really is gritting his teeth and going for it today, Big George, the man from Charlotte. And again, it looks as though Hoffmann has got himself back into the front running here. As the TVM, I will presume that Peter van Petegem must have got himself up here as well. Van den Broek tags on to the back. Hincapie has made it. This is becoming a very tasty lead group at the moment. 3, 6, 9, about 11 or so riders in this front group. And quality they are too. Rabobank have 2, TVM have 2. Française des Jeux have got 1 rider across, but not a big gap, Paul. And in fact, they're a little bit bedraggled as they come over the summit, but indeed, I think they'll all get back.
It looks as if it will all come back together. It looked initially as if that group of 6, right, there's Museo, he's made it to the group as well. Hincapie, Van den Broek, all the big names, but there's not been a major decision in this group here. Looking back down the long line of riders, it looks as if they've all stayed together over the top of the Old Quaremont, and I'm quite surprised because it did look as if the field was starting to explode.
Back onto the open highway again. Sorensen, he started something and he's going to try and keep it going, see if he can pull anybody clear. He's got a reaction here from Museo. Oh, the cheeky man, Johan Museo, the winner of this race on 3 occasions, now heading towards the Peterberg. It's just over 1.5 kilometers away. 2 previous winners of the race now on the attack.
Well, that's fantastic to see Johan Museo using a huge gear as he came across there, and there as well in the group coming up behind Michele Bartoli. So once again, Team Mappé have got the strength up there in numbers. Sorensen trying again to split that group, realizing this is an important part. Max Schiandri moving into the group as well. So Max also looking for a good performance today. He'd said that he needed a good performance to get his morale back, and this is the kind of race that suits him.
Well, he has been falling off as well, having silly collisions in training, but he seems to be at last pulling himself away from all of those problems. As this group, and a super crowd here again now, as Museo is the man of the moment. Sorensen fallen back a little bit. Max Schiandri has got himself up here, and rider number 15 tacked on the back is the other Lotto man, Chris Piers. And Van den Broek, Paul, is up here as well.
Incredible. Frank Van den Broek is riding exceptionally, but I must think, Phil, that victory by Johan Museo just a couple of weeks ago in the race called Travers la Belgique must have really been a sweet victory, because that coming almost a year after his crash in Paris-Roubaix, and that must have given him a lot of confidence after a long road of recovery back to the top of international cycling. To me, Johan Museeuw has to be one of the heroes of the sport, but such a great comeback that he's made after almost passing away from that infection that he got in his knee. And on the front there, Michele Bartoli. It'll be interesting to see how these two riders work it out towards the final of this race today.
It most certainly will, because Bartoli, the winner of the World Cup for 2 years now, and before that it was Museeuw who was the World Cup holder. They're both on the same team. They're both considering themselves to be team leaders, as of course they are. And so it really does make one wonder, will they outride or attempt to outride one another if it comes to that?
There was a big group at the bottom of the Old Quaremont, although there have been a lot of riders returning to the front of the race now. I only make it around about 35 riders in this group, Phil, and it has had a serious effect once again, the Old Quaremont, because they've left around about 60 riders behind and they won't get a chance of recovering. The race is in fact confirming it's 33 riders in that leading group, and very shortly they will turn again, a very sharp right-hand turn onto the Paterberg, which I think is every bit as hard as the old Koppenberg used to be.
Well, sorry, Paul.
This looks like Bartoli's gone off the front,
It's
and that's a
definitely
strange
Bartoli.
surprise.
That's his style, and in fact Bartoli is now trying to continue what Rolf Sorensen and Tristan Hoffmann started, but Van den Broek is streaking after him here, and it looks as though Max Chandry is catching the train as well as he wipes the sweat off his brow. But this is an interesting move, isn't it? After Museeuw, it's Bartoli.
That's interesting. That's the way it probably is going to be. And in fact, let's not forget that it wasn't too long ago Frank Van den Broek was on his backside at the bottom of one of the climbs, and he doesn't seem to have been affected too much by it. Bartoli turning right onto the cobbles, leading them up the Paterberg, 20% at its highest part.
Ouch.
It's only 350 meters long, and I tell you, it's a swine.
Probably just as well, because that in old terms is 1 in 5 here, and we've got 400 meters of cobbles. As now Bartoli starts to find the smooth road, because he's first up it, he gets the ditch, followed by Sorensen again. Now Van den Broek, Max Chandry there, and Schmill's tucked in nicely on Chandry's wheel. So the World Cup leader isn't going to concede. Remember, he's finished third 3 times in this race. He's had a 4th, I think he's had a 6th. He's really been a man of Flanders, Andre Schmill.
It certainly has big acceleration now. Michele Bartoli, this is an awful long way to go if you're trying to go and win this race alone. 57 kilometers to go from the finish, and Van den Broek's not having any of it. I'm coming straight after you. I know you can ride this well, race. Look at that, 20%, and you can see the power. And I have to say, at the moment, this man is riding in a gear of 39 teeth at the front and 23 tooth sprocket at the rear. So that gives you an idea just how difficult this climb is.
And he's just about hanging on to some sort of rhythm here. Massive crowd on this climb. This is the one where they expected, I think, to see something decisive. They might well be seeing something decisive, because Frankie Van den Broek is coming across. He still gives a couple of years in age to Bartoli, but in strength they seem to be pretty much equal at the moment. Van den Broek has tremendous form. He is second over the top of the Paterberg. Now, who's going to be third, and are they going to get together?
Got to get right onto the wheel of Michele Bartoli as soon as they go over the top of the climb, though, because if you're not on Bartoli's wheel, he is such a strong rider, and I can't imagine he wants to ride all the way to the finish on his own. But Chandry Phil is in good form. He's bringing them back up with Andre Schmil, and Sorensen is still in there at the front of this group. So this race, with still, let's not forget, an hour and a half's racing left to go, is really hotting up.
Well, they're under pressure now. The stars by the fact that they're great bike riders, and they're all having to do their own work now. They can't call upon their helpers, because this is a crunch period of the Tour of Flanders. And Andre Schmil, remember, a past winner of Paris-Roubaix and a man for all of the classic races, trying to make contact. And certainly Jean-Luc Van den Broek is making, Frankie Van den Broek rather, is making contact with Michele Bartoli. So the race is being reshaped now. The Belgian, who was a member of the Mapei team, now joining Cofidis at the same time that Bartoli has gone across to Mapei.
He's having a hard job there getting across to the wheel of Michele Bartoli, because he's not quite in the slipstream yet, and he realizes and he knows he must get right onto the back wheel of Michele Bartoli, because if he doesn't do it shortly, Bartoli's going to steal off to a lone lead. But he's pegging him back nicely now, but as he's doing it, in fact, Andre Schmil is coming back there with Chandry, so it's all back together again.
Yeah, Chandry, Sorensen, Peter Van Petegem, I think, has got himself up here. Johan Museeuw. So this is an interesting move, and is that Museeuw walking straight through? And in fact, Chandry's put his hand up there. I wonder if he's had a flat tyre.
Museeuw have to say, Phil, today is using a huge gear, absolutely massive gear. And I think that's got something to do with the fact that he doesn't have the suppleness in his legs after all of the training he's had to put in to get himself back to the power that he had before. But he's certainly powered himself off the front there, and that's Hincapie. Hincapie leaping off the front of that group there, seeing the danger of allowing a man like Johan Museeuw to go clear. George today is riding like a man possessed.
Well, we're seeing all the stars of the sport really scrapping today, and they're trying to split this race up one-on-one attacking. Here comes the champion of the United States. He'll defend that title in Philadelphia in June this year. George Hincapie joins the leaders now. So he's back up again with two guys who have won this race in the past, Johan Museeuw and Rolf Sorensen. Museeuw, in fact, has got himself 3 victories in this event.
Today he'd be looking for a 4th victory, and that would be incredible, Phil. 1 year after that crash in Paris-Roubaix, 1 year after his victory, because let's not forget, he is the defending champion of the Tour of Flanders, riding away to an incredible lone victory last year. And it's hard to believe what has happened in his year, and it's going to be an incredible performance by him if he can get up there again. Lars Mikkelsen, former winner of Gent-Wevelgem there. The next climb they're looking at is going to be Kortekeer, 1.7 kilometers away from here, and you can see the urgency. Everybody realizing how important it is to stay near the front on these climbs because they're so repetitive, and the real onus is on elimination from the rear of the group. Evgeny Spruk riding very well in the Classics too for the Lampre squad there in the purple and blue jersey, riding to the front.
And a good result in Milan-San Remo, Spruk as well. And so he's trying to get the Lampre boys up there. They were also in Australia for early season form. They enjoyed their visit too. But there's still a big group there, but it's now only a third of the size since the old Quaremont of what the peloton was. Some 33 riders, and if they're not quick, they're going to see the leading group even get stretched further, because this group is going clear at the moment. Hincapie is in there for the US, and what a great result it would be if he got the win. No American riders ever won the Tour of Flanders. Now what's happened here? Museeuw's gone down the line, checking out who's actually formed the gap here, and that's very typical of the man to see what the opposition is like. Peter van Petegem is also up here now.
Richard Farazijn wearing number 72 for the Cofidis squad, but it is great to see Hincapie is reading this race perfectly.
And he's looking at the ride, he's confident.
He's definitely riding like a man who is not just a passenger in this race. He's a man who is taking part in the racing. He's taking part in the decision-making of this race, and he's going with all the right moves.
It looks as though Sorensen's decided to try again to see what he can do. He's anxious to keep the momentum going now. He's got a nice working light group getting clear here. That main chase group is falling further and further behind, but he doesn't want to lose the momentum of the attack, and he's going to try and keep this going at least till he gets over the Kortekeer climb.
The attacks coming all the time from this leading group of riders. Again, somebody shot off the front there. In fact, that Rabobank man was brought back into the pack, and somebody went almost immediately over the top. But I have to say, Museeuw is riding sensibly today. He realizes that this is going to be the longest race he's ridden. In fact, he's lost a bit of his ability to go around corners there.
Certainly did.
This is going to be one of the longest races he's ridden since his comeback, so he's conserving as much energy as he can. He's paying a great deal of attention to the way the race is unfolding, sitting at the back, looking at everybody else, and making sure that he doesn't do too much, and trying to save, I would think, a lot of energy for the final.
Looking down there from the helicopter, that breakaway still in a little bit of disarray. Here comes the chase group. They've got them under control at the moment. And it's the Lotto riders on the front, and Shamil, now having missed that move, is 5th rider down the line, so he's had to send his men up front to do something about it. While Rolf Sorensen still trying to go away on his own here, heading towards the Kortekeer now. 8% climb, only 600 metres long, and it only climbs 36 metres above sea level from where it starts. But it's short and snappy, might be another springboard to get this small group even further ahead.
Well, Sorensen, 33 years of age, he's been around for an awful long time. He was very unlucky not to win the World Cup a couple of years ago. In fact, just towards the end of the season, when it looked as if he had the World Cup actually completely sewn up, he fell off and broke his wrist and wasn't able to defend his title, leaving the way open for Michele Bartoli to take victory in the season-long competition. Bartoli in this group as well. It looks as if it's all coming back together once again as our leader Rolf Sorensen gets into the dark tree section of the Kortekeer. Just a short climb, but still George Hincapie in that leading group, but it's all coming back together, and we're going to end up on the slopes of Kortekeer with, again, just one lone leader, Rolf Sorensen from Denmark.
You're right though, Paul. Rolf has had a lot of serious crashes. He's broken his wrist twice in various races, and of course his most famous crash is when he crashed out of the Tour de France in 1991 at Valenciennes, I think it was, where he broke his collarbone in about the last kilometre of the race, and that was the end of him in the yellow jersey as well.
Well, the incredible thing was he actually got himself back up and finished the race with a broken collarbone and managed to finish in the same time as the main field. So he was still actually yellow jersey on the finish line, but he wasn't able to start the next day, and I think that was an awful shame for him.
Well, it's incredibly sad, but we've also seen him pull off some great wins like Paris, Brussels and Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and of course this event a couple of years ago as well. Anyway, back to the present day. It's another day, it's another race, it's another year, and this is now the Kortekia climb, and Sorensen is on the attack. A group of what looks to be 8 or 9 riders trying to sort it out behind.
It looks as if they've actually just been joined by the remnants of the main group there. Peter Farazijn now from Cofidis, leaping off the front there. He's going to try and get himself across to Rolf Sorensen. And again, Phil, look at that. The national champion of the US, George Hincapie, riding to the front of the group.
Superb.
He's riding a brilliant race so far. He's always in the action. He's always very close to the front. And I tell you what, I wouldn't be surprised to see George climbing onto the podium at the end of this race today, because he looks magnificent.
Well, I hope you're right, because George hasn't made a mistake and he's got great form this season, and no doubt his morale is sky high after that great ride in Milan-San Remo. But here we are, Sorensen, still a long way to go. We're just on 52, 53 kilometres to race, which is around 32 miles, and Sorensen's lead is up now as a group behind is trying to sort itself out, and Farazijn is the man who's doing the chasing.
Interesting point about Rolf Sorensen. It's his dad's birthday today. And I asked him this morning what he'd got his dad for his birthday. He says, I haven't given him anything yet, and I hope it's going to be a victory in the Tour of Flanders, and he's definitely trying to do that. Look at that. There's confirmation of the time gaps, Phil. 8 seconds back to Farazijn and 17 seconds to the group Vandenbroek, they're calling it these days.
And Farazijn's only ever won 2 races in his whole career, which began in 1991. One was in Kortrijk, so that would have been in Kemess in Belgium, and the other was the Grand Prix Wallonie, and that was back in 1994. Yet he's a man who is always in the front running, and he's always mentioned a lot on television, and I'm rather surprised to think that's all he has won, 2 events.
It's not easy to win professional races. Some riders wait an awful long time before getting a professional victory under their belt. In fact, I was a pro for 4 years before I actually won a race, and that was a great shock when I actually did. I almost fell off.
It must have been. But that would have been, what, the Grand Prix de now? Or was there Criterium in San Sebastian?
I can't even remember now. It's such a long time ago.
It left a big impression.
It did, certainly did. But Rolf Sorensen doesn't have to worry about that, because this guy's won an awful lot of races. He looks fantastic on a bike. You can see how comfortable he is, just sitting there solidly, the wheels just flicking over there, but he's about to get company, because Farazijn not looking quite as smooth and articulate on the bike as Sorensen does, but he's actually quite efficient in getting across the gap. And there's the rest of the group there, just coming through the haze.
Well, Rolf could do worse than wait for Farazijn, and then he can get up to him, and then he can get something going in tandem. I can't help remembering at the start when you were talking to Rolf, Paul, how confident he was. He would be in the thick of the action today, and here he is now with just on 50 kilometres to go, trying to shape this race.
Big group there again. Big George on the front. Big George once again putting the pressure on, but now it's becoming a little more tactical, because right on his wheel he's got one of the Rabobank riders getting in there, and I think that's Zeberg, yeah, and also one of the riders from Mappé coming forward. That looks like Wilfred Peters trying to leap across the gap.
Well, who else would it be indeed but that very solid domestic Wilfred Peters trying to reach Marcus Zeberg, who's on the Rabobank squad now with 7 more climbs to come and 5 more stretches of cobblestones. One by one, they're flying off the front to try and reform at the great, just behind Sorensen and Farazijn as a chase group.
Well, this race is far from over. Still, the big team's got a lot of riders present. A lot of riders from Mappé in this group, and also a lot of grey jerseys from the TVM squad as well. The next climb of the day, another very difficult steep climb, the Tyenberg. It's just around about 3 kilometres away from where we are now. Zabel moving into this group now. That is a surprise to see Erik Zabel at the kill at the moment, because he is the kind of man that if they drag him to the finish, nobody's going to beat him.
Absolutely, and Zabel is a man that doesn't really get a result out of Flanders, so I'm a bit surprised to see him here, because, for example, the Belgian champion Tom Steels isn't riding this race. He's probably saving himself for either Paris-Roubaix or Ghent-Wevelgem still to come. But they've rested him for the Tour of Flanders, and I find it surprising that the champion of Belgium wouldn't want to excel in the Tour of Flanders.
Well, that's the power of a team like Mappé. It's very difficult for them to choose the best combination for a race like Tour of Flanders, and they probably feel that because of the repetitive nature of all of the climbs here in Flanders, it doesn't suit Tom Steels, and unfortunately for them, they had to put in a very strong squad, and I think they put one of the best squads together they could, and they're looking to try and defend their role as the #1 team in the Classics, and hopefully today the victory is going to go to their camp, which is why they had to leave the Belgian champion at home.
Well, they haven't got to the lead yet because Rabobank and Cofidis are setting the pace on the Taaienberg. As we start, it's a cobble climb, but Sorensen trying to find a little bit of a smoother road on the right-hand side, but you pay for it because it looks rather dirty. And in fact, the Cofidis rider now with him. So the gap no more than 8 or 9 seconds. It'd be great to see who's entered the climb just behind them to see if they're coming up. But look at the suppleness here of Sorensen and the strength of the Dane as he tries to ride away now from Farazijn on the climb. Interesting to the crowd, Paul, are much more orderly here now. They're using sort of bits of string to hold them back, unlike the past.
They're keeping them right back off the road because it also gives the riders an advantage to use all of the road. In the past, the crowds were so huge on the cobbled climbs that in fact they used to get onto the road, forcing the riders to ride right up the cobblestones in the middle, and these two riders have taken advantage of the organisation that has come into play in the Tour of Flanders these days, and they're able to use the whole road. In fact, that little gutter at the side is very smooth, and these two riders will have increased their advantage behind. Sorensen looking very comfortable still, sitting on the top of the handlebars here. You can see using a nice small gear, flicking those pedals over nice and easily, and still he's taking advantage of the smoothness in the middle of the road there, just before the pavement at the side. Behind, the work is being done by Wilfred Peters once again, shadowed by Zeeberg, and right on the back there, it looks very much like Servais Carnarvon and another rider from Lotto trying to get in the action.
Well, here comes Wilfred trying to put the Mappés back in the thick of the action, but it's interesting to note that the big boys aren't quite here at the moment, having made a couple of attempts at attacks and they've failed. Now this Servais Carnarvon, you're right there, Paul.
It's Joe Plancard, in fact.
And he almost went down, you know.
He nearly lost it.
Yep, he almost hit that little edge to the road that Paul told us about, and it could well have gone down ever so easily, but he's okay.
That was a good reflex by him, and it nearly caught George Hincapie hobbling, because Hincapie once again has got himself into the leading group, and there's a problem there. Somebody from Cofidis seems to have a problem. Let's have a look at just exactly how dangerous it is on the side of the road there. A quick flick, and you see he's out of the saddle, controlling his bike, and Hincapie just not even panicking, just switching onto the cobbles and riding around him.
Interesting bit of skill. I think that caught a glimpse there. That was the 50 kilometres to go banner left in the race. And number 187 here is Roman Veensteins, an interesting rider from Latvia, only turned pro last year, but already he's won a clutch of races. He's won in Italy, he's won a couple of stages of Tirreno Adriatico, he won the overall and a stage in the Florence-Rome event. So he does come here with a lot of good form, and first season last year when he had 5 wins as well. So clearly a rider of a good find there for the new team, Vini Calderola.
Started off the Tirreno Adriatico, winning the first stage and taking the jersey, and a lot of people thought it would be difficult to take it away from him, and this man we will certainly see a lot of in the future. There's confirmation of the group. A couple of Belgians at the top, Peters and Plancard, Zeeberg from Switzerland, Carnarvon, and sitting on the back there, Veensteins, and let's not forget George Hincapie riding a magic race. There's Hincapie there on the left-hand side. He's still, Phil, very attentive, looking at the faces of the riders with him all the time, being very alert, riding well, making sure that he doesn't do too much, but he seems to be slipping in the moves with great ease and not using a lot of energy.
Changed man this year, absolutely, and he turned down a chance to ride on the Mappé team as well. He chose to stay with it, loyal to his American squad, US Postal, and he's come out with some superb form this year. It's an interesting little break, this, because none of these riders are the big classic winners yet in the chase. Sorensen certainly is at the front, but it's interesting to see that it's a good composition of very strong riders, and any one of these riders could add a classic to their list of good wins.
Certainly one man who would like to is Joe Plancard, because he comes from the great Plancard dynasty. His father, Willie, finished second in the World Championships in 1964 behind Eddie Merckx. And in fact, his uncles, Walter and Eddie, both won this race a few years ago. So he too now will be looking to add his name to the great family list.
Well, he's got to get over the Eichenberg first. That's our next obstacle. And this will be hill number 11 of 16, but he's got them organised as Joe comes to the back. He had a second place in Paris-Roubaix. That's still his best performance, I think. And They've still got the problem of bringing back the two leaders as well. But Zeberg will be happy to sit there, because once he gets up to Sorensen, then we're going to have two Rabobanks at the front, and it'll work very well. As Rolf continues here now, and he's found himself a workman partner in Peter Faderzijn.
Well, Faderzijn has come to the front, and he's definitely convinced that he's going to try and make the success of this breakaway. They want to get to the next climb, the Eichenberg, with a nice advantage over the chasing group of 6. And the main field now is dropping to some 30 seconds behind this group with George Hincapie in it. So this could well be a very strange move for the race, and it could well be the success of a man like Hincapie if the reaction doesn't come from behind. But I can't believe, Phil, that Team Mappé, who only really have Wilfred Peters in this group, are going to let that group go clear. In fact, you can start looking back down the line there. You can see the main field, and it in fact has swelled up to a fairly sizable group.
It's interesting too that those riders have got no cover at all. Should they have a flat tyre right now, they'll be back in this group as fast as you like. But the gaps are something like about 15 seconds to the leaders, and then a gap of about 25 seconds back to this field. And not surprisingly, the Lampre-Dakin team are having to do all the work. There goes the white jersey of André Schmil. It doesn't look too concerned with the way things are going at the moment, because a lot of the big names are still in this group. But even so, that chase group to me is very, very strong and full of willing workhorses.
It's what the chaos looks like at the back of the group. Everybody scrambling to get onto the wheel of the man in front. Although it doesn't look like it, you can't see here through the fields of Belgium. There's a very strong crosswind coming across from the left-hand side, and this race is so difficult to understand because you're turning left and right. There was Frankie Andreu at the back there. Andreu riding exceptionally well here. He's placed his man, George Hincapie, the man he told me this morning was his favourite for the day, into the breakaway group, who's trying to get across to Rolf Sorensen. So Frankie's going to be pretty happy with that. But at the back, it really is chaos in a race like the Tour of Flanders.
Yes, one or two just happy to continue towards the finish at Meerbecker here without taking any further part in the race. But even so, just to finish the Tour of Flanders, it is quite an achievement indeed. Little glimpse there, Stuart O'Grady, as he went through, number 54.
They're riding fairly much to the back. I'm surprised because O'Grady's got a good form at the moment after his early season win in the Tour Down Under, and I would think he should still have it and should be a little closer to the front, especially at the approach of a climb like this, the Eichenberg, 1.2 kilometers long and 10% at the steepest part.
And cobbled, but at the moment they've got themselves a smooth stretch of road. That's the advantage of being in the lead. And once again, Rolf Sorensen, who has started to hurt this race really ever since the climb of the old Quaremont, which is a way back now, is still in action at the front here, and Faderzijn quite prepared to allow him to make the pace on these climbs.
Well, I have to say, Faderzijn has got a very ungainly style, but it's working out well. But he has been put under pressure by Sorensen, who looks such a cool customer on his bike. He doesn't seem to be using very much effort at all as he glides up this climb, and Weinstein's now getting a sample of what the climb of the Eichenberg is like. And you can see Joe Planckaert, he's got the experience of these climbs. All of the Belgians train on these climbs at some time during the season, and that's why Planckaert is switching across from left to right to try and get onto the smoothest part of the course.
Weinstein's actually is in a bit of trouble at the back there. He doesn't like the cobbles at all, though he's got good form. But Peter's having to fill the gap. Back up with the two front runners now, and Rolf's still setting the pace here, as happy as you like. His dad's probably his greatest supporter, Paul. You're mentioning it's his birthday today. And, well, Rolf often sees his best supporter is his dad, who's followed him around the Tour de France for many years. And, of course, he's witnessed his victories in some of the great classic races. That looks like Matt White trying to hang on here at the back of the race. An Australian rider, but this is the back of the race right now in the main field. And it doesn't look so smooth anymore, does it, when you see the riders now, the distance beginning to get to those legs, as they start to just chase wheels and hope they can hang on just long enough to tip over the top and then resume their position in the peloton.
A lot of the TVM riders starting to slip down this bunch now after the work they've been doing trying to keep the race together, and this is when it really starts to dig deep into the muscles when you get onto the slopes of this climb. They're moving up towards the front now. Again, the TVM riders putting the pressure on. This is Henrik van Dijk on the front here. On his wheel, Peter van Petegem. Van Petegem only lives about 15 kilometers away from here, so you can be sure he knows this climb pretty well indeed. And he's using his teammates now, and a lot of the TVM riders slipping to the back of the group because they've done big efforts so far.
Well, Van Petegem, the time gap at the moment to the two front runners is not far off a minute now to this group containing Van Petegem and co. That chase group of 6 is in between, so we can reckon that's around about 20. Oh, here we go. 23 seconds is the gap, and 55 it is back to the chase group, which contains Museo as well as Frank Vandenbroek and Peter van Petegem.
Planckaert on the front of that group, putting the pressure on now. He realises the closer they get to the finish, the bigger the chances. But I think that gap, Phil, was a little wrong, because there's the main group now, and it's certainly, by my account, a lot less than 55 seconds. So the main field obviously picking up the speed, trying to nail back those leading route riders.
Well, the pace was being done there by TVM because they're anxious to try and put matters to right here. They've got themselves in firm control of the peloton. They don't have anybody in that breakaway, remember, and so they're going to have to do something about it. And still the pace being made by Van Dijk, and a little bit of a blocking move being made by the followers there, which was Martin Den Bakker of Rabobank. And there's been a crash here. This is at the front, this is in the chase group, and that's Planckaert on the floor. And he doesn't look too clever at all at the moment. Joe Planckaert has gone down. Well, unfortunately, our camera didn't show us that, but I hope we get a slow motion of this, because I don't quite know what happened, but it looks on the right-hand bend there. Planckaert has just lost it completely, and he's quite pained at the moment.
But he doesn't look very comfortable at all. He's going to get picked up by the rest of the main field, and that will be a shame, because he was in the group, and there is the main group. So you can see just how quickly they'd nailed back that group. There is a chance to see just exactly what happens. Planckaert is on the front there going around the corner, and he's just brought his wheel around a little bit too much, and the front wheel has fallen from underneath him. Hincapie again got the agility to flick himself around, and it looks as if he's hurt his wrist.
But Zeeberg literally got off his bike in mid-air there. He didn't even fall down. He walked away from the crash and left his bike on the floor. Poor old Joe is in a bit of bother now. And here comes Marcus. He never hurt himself at all. He stepped off his bike as it fell down. He's now trying to get back up to the lead group here. Let's have another look. The leader again for the third time today has gone down, seemingly for no reason other than overcooking it. Watch Zeeberg in second place because he realised he was going to fall, and his bike goes down, and Zeeberg simply jumped over the handlebars and walked away from the crash. Well, that was an amazing piece of rodeo ship, I suppose we call that.
Pretty smart move by Zeeberg there. But I tell you one thing, next week I would think that Joe Planckaert's going to get a lot of stick from the rest of the Planckaert tribe.
Yes, he'll be on the phone to Uncle Walter again tonight. Anyway, back that was at the top of the Eichenberg, by the way, and we're having yet another look at how to leapfrog a fallen rider by Marcus Zeeberg of Rabobank. Weinsteins gets through on the left quite clearly. George gets through on the inside, and here comes poor old Joe. He is in a little bit of pain now.
In fact, he's at the back of the group now. He's gone off the back. He's got the team manager up alongside. So the main field came up and straight by him there. So it looks as if John-Luc Vandenbroek has gone in front. In fact, they're going to change his machine. Here's a quick change. The man on the right-hand side there, by the way, just getting the bike off the car, is Frank Vandenbroek's dad, Jean-Jacques Vandenbroek. So it's difficult to know which team he's going to be betting on today.
Well, he certainly wasn't biased in his change, Paul. That was a very slick bike change for Joe, who obviously damaged his machine in the crash. Now he's got a ride which is a strange bike for him, and it looks as though it's not his original spur bike either. He looks a bit strange on this one, but he's on his way again. And there's his position in Milan-San Remo, finished 8th and picked up 24 World Cup points. So he had a good ride in Milan-San Remo. He's clearly got good form, but one has to say the crash was his own fault.
Yeah, it was. He was at the front. He tried to go around the corner, and his front wheel just came away from him, as if he was a little too nervous at the top of the Eichenberg. And he's got Stuart O'Grady must have had a problem too, because O'Grady is coming up from behind as well here. And fortunately for Joe Planckaert, he's got a teammate catching him up. This is Thierry Marchal, one of the French-speaking riders on the Lotto squad. So I should think Joe Planckaert will get himself back into the group with Vandenbroek and with Johan Museo, but still the race situation on the road is the two leaders and now a chasing group of 5 riders in the middle.
So all hope is not yet lost. There's still not a big time gap across the whole of the field back to that original bunch of 33. Still in very much with a shout here, but still it's Sorensen setting the pace, and still being joined here by Farazijn, who doesn't seem to be contributing too much to it either.
Well, Farazijn went out originally to make sure he covered the breakaway, but I think in the back of his mind he must still be thinking about Frank Vandenbroek, because let's not forget Frank Vandenbroek is the solitary leader of the Cofidis team at the start of the race today, and Farazijn has decided, I think I'll sit up and wait now, because it's getting a little bit too hard with Rolf Sorensen. And the reaction behind, again, Phil, is coming from Hincapie.
Yeah, George is riding a marvellous race, and we're beginning to all hope here that George pulls off what would be a great surprise and a great victory. But George looking wisely to see who's going to give him a hand. as they all come through. Servais Kanavan's here, Margaret Zeberg, after his little fall there, is back in the action. Peters is here. Hincapie, Veensteins, Sorensen and Farazijn gives us now a new group of 7 leaders. More or less, yes, they're all together.
Well, Rolf Sorensen has put an awful lot of energy into trying to make these breakaways get off the front, and I think that's a good move by him, because now it's put Rabobank into a pretty reasonable situation. They've got 2 riders in the leading group of 7. Sorensen himself a serious candidate for victory, but also Zeberg, because if it comes down to the sprint, he's a great man, because he really does win sprints, and especially bunch sprints. He won a couple last year in the Tour of Spain, proving that he is one of the top riders. But they've moved all the neutral service cars out, Phil. The last time check we had officially was 55 seconds, and I have to think it's well under 30 now.
Well, there's the confirmation of those names I've just given you, and we're around about 42 kilometres still to race, and we're looking for the 12th hill, which will be the Leberg. It's a little way yet, but you're right, Paul. In fact, that peloton, which I presume will contain Joe Plankett again, has come back and is imminent now. This is Servais Kanavan here. The group is rejoining. Around about 40 kilometres left to race here in the Leberg, the next climb on the horizon. And we have a group again of circa 40 riders. Well, this has been a real tough race so far, and all the moves have failed.
Well, it's been a tough race, but it's also been a strange race, because these breakaways, which always look to be working well, which always keeps flicking off the front of these groups, end up getting caught, and it's always because there's one team seems to miss out. This last time it was really, I think, because of the crash of Joe Plankart that turned the tables for the breakaway, because once Joe Plankart was no longer in the group, the Lotto squad came to the front and took the race by the horns and then pulled it all back together. So we're now back in a similar situation, a status quo, and I'm sure we'll see another attack coming when we get to the next climb of the day, and that's going to be the Leiderberg. But another tough climb follows almost immediately after that, and that's the 13th climb of the day, the Berendries.
And they're the ones culminating in the Muur, and then of course the Bosberg, which was always chosen in the old days by Edwig van Hooijdonk, who won the men's senior race twice and the amateur version once.
De Backer going off the front, another attack. The Dutch really seem to be taking this race today, because straight after him goes Servais Kanavan, and look at this again, Wilfred Peters. Sorry boys, you're not going anywhere without a Mappe man, and the Mappe man today is going to be me.
He is such a workhorse for the team. This is a good move, this one, as again the counter-attacks are coming. But Den Bakker now trying to soften them up, and this is a swing of tactics now to see TVM. They've been on the defence until now, but they're going to make sure they don't miss the next move, as Den Bakker for Rabobank tries to shut it down as well.
2 former champions of Holland, Den Bakker and Kanavan together, and again a small group of riders coming across the gap there that will, I think, get together at the front there, making a leading group of 6 riders. But the pressure is not going off in the main field this time, because they're in a big long line there chasing the leading group of 6, and I'm sure that'll come back together once again.
It'll be interesting to know who the other riders are who have now come across this gap. Kanavan is an opportunist and does win races, and former champion of Holland, but he's not a big-time winner yet. He's only a youngster. Peters is up here as well. Den Bakker has got across the gap, but we'll find out who the rest are when we can, as we're heading up now towards climb number 12. It'll stretch 2 kilometres of cobblestones to greet the riders now, as we wander and twist our way around the Flanders area of Belgium. There's the Leberg. It's 1.8 kilometres away from them yet.
I tell you what, we might not get a chance to ID those riders there, because it's all going to come back together once again. There is a rider from Lotto who has got himself into the leading group there, so that 6 is about to get caught by the main field.
Well, there's not much in it, but they're not organising themselves yet again here. We start the cobble climb of the Leberg. We're just on the edge of it here, and is this Sprooks trying to have a go?
Very much like Dieriksen. He's actually another rider who's made the big changes during the winter. He's got across there to the group there in 2nd position. Martin Den Bakker, and not too far behind is that main field being led by the Lotto squad, and it seems that Lotto are missing out quite a lot now. Obviously a bit of panic has come into the squad because of that incident with Joe Plankart there, and the responsibility for the race now is starting to fall on their shoulders. But on this, Dieriksen is a fantastic rider. Ludo Dieriksen, who rides for this year for Lampre, has been a great rider, won a lot of races in Belgium, and sitting on the back, the policeman for the day for Mappe. I have to say, Wilfred Peters looking very calm and collected.
Well, Ludo Dieriksen, I caught a glimpse of him on the last climb. He was almost on the tail of the bunch, And yet here he is now. When that bunch regrouped, he was the one with the freshest legs, and he's putting quite a heavy attack here for Lamprey. There's the full line for the break now, so Farazine's still in this breakaway. He's managed to find his legs to go again.
It's interesting to note that of all these 6 riders, they all speak the Dutch language, because there are 4 Belgians and 2 Dutchmen. So this race today really being dominated by the northern lands, the flatlands Dutch, the Belgium and Holland. They really are looking for the victory today. As you can see right on the front there, Mario Aerts from the Lotto Mobistar team is trying to pull it all back together to keep their man André Schmeel in with a chance, because I have to think that after that crash, I think Joe Plancard is having a hard time in that group.
Well, it looks as though Aerts is doing a good job here, because they aren't really getting away, but they must be getting weaker by the minute now as these riders go on. Michele Bartoli there on the inside of the Lotto man, also looking around and taking no chances. A little bit of a difficult left-hander that downhill as we head now towards the Leberg climb itself. And this group of 6 or 7 riders is not very far clear. There's the next obstacle, 900 metres this one, a little bit higher than the previous one at 43 metres, not quite so steep.
Moving on to the wheel of Michele Bartoli, I caught a glimpse there of Peter van Petegem, and right behind him André Schmeel. So all the big names are really keeping an eye on each other, making sure that they ride to the front, making sure that nobody clips off, because I think in the back of their mind now, everybody has got over the old Quaremont, they've got over the majority of the climbs in between, and now they're thinking forward to the Mur de Grammont, but not Michele Bartoli.
They just picked up the leaders, and Bartoli has sprinted off as if it was the finish of the race. He has just roared out of the pack here. The World Cup holder has gone. Now this will be an interesting move, Paul, because Museu, will he chase him or will he watch the move take place? It looks to me as though that could be Museu, who might be third wheel here.
I think Museu has seen the move, read the move, and gone straight onto the wheel of André Schmeel. Michele Bartoli attacked perfectly, and it is. There he is, the man of the match. He's got to be one of my heroes for this year. That is Johan Museu. Coming across, though, Peter van Petegem is not letting anybody slip away from him. And Martin Den Bakker, who is riding a storming Tour of Flanders today, putting Rabobank back into the picture.
Well, that was a superb attack, but you know Museu is watching even his own team today. And you can't blame a man. He doesn't bring the rest up, and he certainly didn't. He's got the right to go with him, and he's done just that. So these are possible winners now, and look at the gaps in the field as they come over the top of the Leberg. We've got André Schmeel, Johan Museu, Van Petegem, Den Bakker and Michele Bartoli up there.
There's a problem there with Van Petegem, or one of the TVM riders at the back there. Wasn't in fact Van Petegem, that was at the back of the race there. The camera trying to give us the full picture, but somebody from TVM's had an incident at the back. I think Van den Broeke is coming across here in this group as well, riding near the front there. You can see the red and white jersey. He has in fact he's missed out here, and it's Peter Farazijn who's trying to ride across the gap again. So Cofidis counting today not on Frank Van den Broeke, but counting on Peter Farazijn to do the work for the French squad.
And the rider going across with him here is the Lotto rider, Chris Peers. So a little bit of help going forward for André Schmeel. If he gets up there, Chris has been in a lot of moves this year without great results, so he's got good form as well. Van den Broeke, Paul, seems to have dropped out of the frame. We haven't seen him for about an hour.
Well, let's not forget that he had a very serious crash in the early part of this race on the slopes of the Molenberg, and in fact race radio reporting that he did have another one as well, but we didn't get a chance to see it on camera. So he may well be starting to suffer from all those crashes. And let's not forget, Frank Van den Broeke is still only 24 years of age.
Absolutely, and what a promise for the future too. And we're coming into the last 35 kilometres of this race at the moment. It looks as though we've got 7 riders clear. There are the names for you now. The majority of them have got Belgian flags next to the name. Every reason to race in what is their big event, the Tour of Flanders.
Well, the next climb of the day is going to be the Berendries, and that is the climb where last year Johan Museu launched his attack for victory. But in fact, Den Bakker, I think, has decided he can't wait any longer, and he's launched himself off the front of that group.
Well, the Berendries, followed by the Ten Bos, followed by the Muur, followed by the Bosberg, followed by the finishing line. And there's still a lot of riders feel they are in with a chance here, as again this is Dirksen's trying to go clear.
Everybody's trying to launch themselves off the front of this group. We're coming into the very important part now of the race. Berendries, followed by Ten Bos, and then the big difficult climb of the day, the Mur de Grammont, and still Hincapie is in the action. There's the champion's jersey at the front, followed again by Max Chiandri from the Française des Jeux in the white jersey. But Hincapie is riding this race perfectly. He's got no teammates left in the group, so if he has any problems now, it's going to be very difficult for him to recover for them. But for the moment, I have to say that Hincapie has ridden a race perfect.
Well, he's got help from Dirksen's there, who wants to get the Lamprey boys back into the thick of it as well. So George has got to now work out the riders with the interest to chase down this breakaway of 7. Because with names like Bartoli and Museo up there, it is not going to be easy.
Farazijn has made it a good move by him. He's read
had
the
a
move.
great race.
He's seen the fact that there was nobody there from Cofidis and come straight to the front, but that was an excellent attack just at the right time. Immediately the group came back together. Michele Bartoli took the opportunity and leapt out of the pack.
Crafty Andre Schmil looks over his shoulder to see who's come across. He made the big effort. He had the men he was marking clearly. One was Bartoli. As soon as Bartoli made the move, he was across the gap immediately, as Berg sits at the back there now.
It's amazing to see Johan Museo in there too. He's reading this race perfectly. He's watched all the moves, and whenever something dangerous happens, he's always there. And amazingly enough, Museo doesn't regard this as any race at all. He regards this as his own race. And several times over the last week in the press, he's referred to this as my race. And today, he's hoping that he'll walk himself into history and get himself a 4th victory.
Well, he'll have the whole of Belgium behind him. I said Zeeberg then. It was in fact Den Bakker, of course, in the breakaway. But there's Peter van Petergem, who's never won this race either and treasures it and would love to be up there at the end. As we head now to the Berendries, this is a 13% climb. It lifts up even higher than the previous 2 at 63 metres. And he does all of that in approximately 900 metres of climbing.
And Petergem, 2 times the winner of Het Volk, right on the wheel there of Andre Schmil. Schmil, in fact, originally born in Siberia before moving across to Moldova, and now has changed his nationality to that of a Belgian, and now very much adopted by the Belgian people. He wants to spend the rest of his life here, which is why he took out nationality, and he's all, for the last few years, ridden on the Lotto squad, which is definitely the #1 team in Belgium.
And have been for a long time. It's the National Lottery, of course, the team. And a big crowd, as big as any we've seen in recent years, I think. And as they grit their teeth, here comes Max Chandry as well. He's still looking good and still very much in the thick of the action here. Just behind him, it looks as though we've got Dirksen's. Have to remember that Dirksen now riding in the mauve and blue of the Lamprey team, as Lotto last year. And now, as they continue on this climb, this is not a one race yet, Paul.
It certainly isn't. You can see Chandry in difficulty there. Guinness Brook taking over, and as well at the front of the group there, I'm pretty sure that was a quick sight of Frank van den Broeke moving to the front of the race. Chandry still looking very comfortable. He's hoping that this race will stay together, and he's got a great chance when it comes to the sprint. And the energy seems to have gone out of the leading group of 6 riders, Phil.
Schmil looking over for a little bit of assistance and not really getting it here, because there's why we are having a general regrouping of the race.
That certainly seems to be the pattern of the race, Phil. The attacks keep going and coming back again all day. It's been like that. There have been some excellent moves going off the front. And once again, almost immediately after that regrouping, there are riders starting to go off the front of this group again.
Looks from the helicopter to be around 12-14 riders still trying to split off the front of this group, but the race very definitely now is under pressure. Johan Museo, one of the riders causing the pain as well. There are still 3 climbs remaining, the Ten Boss and the Muir, the big one, and of course the Bosberg just before the finish.
Huge gear that Museo has been using all throughout the stage here. His teammate Michele Bartoli coming over the top now to lead them around this corner after the climb of the Berendries. And as you said, definitely the next climb is going to be Ten Boss, and then it's a long section on the tarmac before they then get to the Mur de Grammont. And although it looked as if it all came back together again, it's split up once again over the final few meters of the Berendries.
There's a lot of riders still in that chase group. It doesn't take an expert now to know that if you're going to win the Tour of Flanders, you have to pay very close attention to the action at the front. And the strong men are the only survivors of this race today. There's no more than 40 riders left in. 30 kilometres to go, a shade under 20 miles left to race. It's not very long by any standards, and any attack now could be the winning move.
You have to be so attentive. You have to make sure that you don't lose too much energy by going with the wrong moves. And again, Mappe shooting somebody across there to get across to that leading group to try and have as many riders as possible in the leading group in this race.
And everybody's dashing for wheels here, hoping for a slight little bit of drift off those passing motorbikes perhaps to help them get across the gap.
Wilfried Peters
Again.
Once again, this man, he won't give up. He realizes Johan Museeu's up the road. He wants to get there. He wants to help out as much as possible to the last moment in this race to try and make sure that the victory goes to Team Mappé. This guy, he really is a star. He works for everybody else in the race, but that effort of his, in fact, has made the group swell quite a bit, because there are around about 20 men at the front of the race, and those guys behind there are going to have a hard time pulling themselves back.
Well, reforming at the front again, and looks like we've got a new rider at the front here at the moment. Oh, I'm not sure, but it might be Medico Gualdi who's hit the front looking for a bit of help. But you're right, Paul, it's a nice group, but it's still a little bit unmanageable. And we've still got the big names of Museeuw, Van den Broek is still here, Schmil is still here, and of course Bartoli, who I think is the man to watch out for right now.
Bartoli certainly has got the form at the moment. He rode, I thought he rode an excellent Milan-San Remo. He didn't come up with the goods, and he wasted an awful lot of energy going after that attack by Marco Pantani. But today, it's a different race. It's not like the Milan-San Remo. At the end, you still have to be fresh, and you still have to have the power to be able to attack on climbs like the Muur de Grammont or the Bosberg. And again, you see, although that group of 20 riders has gone off the front, nobody is laying down arms. And George Hincapie, in fact, for the first time today, seems to have missed out on one of these splits and is forcing his way across the gap.
Yes, and he's going to have to do it quickly, because I get the feeling now that this might be the break of the race. There's looking to be a lot of tired legs down there, and George is losing a lot of ground. He's going to have to work pretty hard. That's a big group that's up there now. It looks to be around 20 riders. Well, they're saying it is 20 riders, and in fact it is a strong group, and the race under pressure here with just 3 climbs to come.
All the big names are in there, the men we've talked about for the last week or so on this Tour of Flanders. Johan Museeuw, Michele Bartoli, Schmil, and it'd be interesting to know if Joe Planckaert has made the split, because after that bad crash he was shaken up quite a bit, and he did seem to recover, and he did get himself back into the big group, but I'm not sure if he's managed to get across here just now.
Well, we certainly haven't caught a glimpse of him. In fact, Philippe Gaumont that crashed early on today, he's gone to hospital at Zottegem, so let's hope he's not too badly injured, but it looked as though he may have broken a bone or two after that fall, the way it was turning out.
Tristan Hoffmann from TVM on the front. Max Schianri still riding very well. Zevgeny Spruk, and the light grey jersey there, just 2 behind Zevgeny Spruk, is Peter van Petegem. I'm not sure, as you've said on many occasions this year, whether I like that grey jersey of TVM, but they're certainly riding well together as a team.
Well, there's a strong attack there, and it's gone by the Lampre team. A good reaction from the rest of the field, though. They're looking for somebody to start the action and jump on it straight away and see what they can get going. But so far, nothing working out. Gian-Matteo Fagnini, by the way, is the Seiko rider, and as I speak of him, it looks like he's launched an attack there on the outside. Well, Fagnini's normally the lead-out man for the big Lion King, Cipollini, who isn't, of course, riding this event, and now having to ride his own race. But he's jumped onto the wheel of Wilfried Peters and sat up for some strange reason.
Well, he didn't want to get away in too much of a breakaway. Surprising move by Peters. Obviously, they're still trying to keep the pressure on the Mappé team now, feeling that this group is much too big for success, so they're trying to split it down to try and get it into a much more manageable size. Schianri now is the man to attack, immediately marked by Michele Bartoli there, wearing number 1, and comfortably on the back of that group, wearing 78, is Frank van den Broeke. So Van den Broeke, I think, only has 1 teammate in this group, and that would be Peter Farazijn, who's ridden an exceptional race so far. But again, I feel that Cofidis is a little light when it comes to the one-day classics. There are not enough men up there in the crucial stages of these races to support a rider like Van den Broeke.
Well, here comes an attack, and this looks like is it Fagnini again having another go? No, this is in fact, this looks like it's Gualdi who's gone here. From Polti, he's launched an attack, and there's been a little bit of a lull here, so clearly he's not the man appearing on the handlebars of too many of the big favourites, because they've allowed him an attack.
Another move coming across from Hoffmann. Tristan Hoffmann, the former champion of Holland, has come across to the leading rider from Polti.
Fabrizio Guidi there, and it's Medico Guidi who's put in the attack.
Peters is going again, Phil. Look at that. That is unbelievable. He's definitely on a mission today. He's definitely going out. And in fact, that attack has opened up a gap. And again, 5 or 6 riders are leaping off the front of this group of 20 riders. And again, instigated by Wilfried Peters on the slopes here of Ten Bosch.
Those long, slender, brown legs, not from the sun but the rust, I think, of all the racing in Belgium this year, as he tries now to climb here with a good pace and trying to pull a little group clear yet again. And it looks as though Farazin's got in this group again, Paul. He's riding superbly today.
A great race today by the Belgians. They've been certainly waving the flags. You can see the flags of the Lion of Flanders out on the road, and many people are nicknaming Johan Museeuw the Lion of Flanders because it's amazing that he's come back to the top of the sport. He's in that group. A good attack by Mappé, but again, Phil, it's all coming back together. Nobody really, when they get into a breakaway situation, wants to give 100% because they're all saving something for the real tough climb to come, the Mur de Grammont.
And as we all know, that is such a difficult climb. None of the vehicles are allowed up there, by the way, because for fear they might break down and block the road and cause the riders to crash. So they have to deviate and go around. And the riders themselves, of course, they take the hard climb up. Fontanelli, Ecotoni just gone through, 162, stage winner of the Giro d'Italia.
Stage winner of two stage wins, I should say, in the Tour de Langkawi a couple of years ago as well. A very good winner of races. Second from the back, Rolf Sorensen, a former winner of the race. Third from the back, Johan Museeuw, another former winner of the race.
Yes, Fanini, but you know, it's funny, but Museeuw, maybe he's nervous of the road since his crash, but if he's not attacking, he tends to hide at the back and watch and wait for his next move. He already knows where he's going to attack, and I'd probably suggest, Paul, that he will now make his next move on the Mur, if he can.
If he can, that's the big question, because after all, let's not forget, we're looking at almost 270 kilometres of racing today, and that's a long way after a year out of the sport, but not far for Wilfred Peters again. Wilfred Peters launching that attack, putting pressure on everybody here, because they know if they let him go, he's the kind of rider who could actually stay clear to the finish.
I don't know how he finds the energy to keep on doing this, because he doesn't shirk his weight in working either, as well as putting in these attacks. Nasty bit of road surface there, as Schmil's was, in fact, Schmil has opened the door there and allowed that break to go clear. It won't be too popular with the rest behind him.
But it won't be too popular with Johan Museeuw, because he was the next man to move up towards the front. Although it's amazing, you see, Museeuw 1 minute was sitting right at the back of the group, and as soon as the danger started to come, as we're approaching now the town of Grammont, we're on the road to Grammont, and then as soon as he could see that there was a bit of danger, he flicked his way straight up to the front. 25 kilometres left now to go to the finish.
Well, we're shortly going to be in the streets of Gerardsbergen, and it's out of that town where the climb starts, the Mur, the Kapelmuur as they call it now, meaning Church Hill. And the group here now are very tense. They're racing flat out, they're trying to hold their positions. They're 24.5 kilometres from the finish. There's still a very big bunch down there, and the front runs do not want to be mixing up with the back ones at this stage, because once they get to the Mur, it'll be every man for himself, and the handful that get over the top first should stay clear to the finish.
Once again, the main group is being swelled from riders coming back from behind. It was just down to 20 riders a few moments ago, and I'm sure it's more than that just now, looking at the big group of riders who've come in. And in fact, I do believe that Eric Zabel has got into this group again, Phil. He's riding an excellent race too.
Well, that is a worrying thought, because Zabel, no doubt the fastest finisher in the group, if he can get over the last couple of climbs and head down to the finish, and that would be a tremendous result for Eric. Started out his season in the Tour Down Under, where he won a couple of stages there, and he's held on to his form. He was so unlucky in many ways to not get 3 Milan-San Remos in a row. He was outwitted by André Schmil, and they're both together in this group now.
Excellent move by André Schmil there at the end of the Milan-San Remo. Yeah. But I tell you one thing, Chiandri's riding a very clever race too today. He's been with all the moves. He's never actually been at the front. Another of those riders who, in this closing stages of the Tour of Flanders, is isolated with no teammates there to help him out, so he has to ride his own race. And we're now looking at 7.5 kilometres to go to the bottom of the Mur, and Hincapie is back in the game. There's Zabel.
Zabel has stepped on the pedals to try and catch up with the back wheel of Flying George Hincapie. Schmil is still here and keeping an eye on everybody, and it looks as though Nardello is here now for Mappé as well. So I think we're back up to that original 40 riders.
It's amazing. It did split on the slopes of Berendries, and it looked as if that was going to be a decisive move of 20 riders. But once again, everybody's recovered and they've brought it all back together. Vandenbroek now being very attentive, slipping onto the wheel here of André Schmil. He too, in fact, a couple of years ago was a teammate of André Schmil, who strangely enough is wearing the old leather hairnet, which not very many riders opt for these days. They're much more at home with the hardshell helmet, which seems to be adopted much more often.
Well, long live the Tour of Flanders. Nicely done by the farmer out of his field down there, and the race goes by. And the field again under pressure at the front. Daylight always between the groups of riders. This is turning out yet again to be a classic Tour of Flanders, as Van den Broek, who seems to have been out of our television cameras for the best part of an hour, is now very much back in them with the major climb of the day just on his nose at about 6 kilometres, the Mur de Grammont.
Moving up, starting to be a lot more attentive too, is Andre Schmil in the white leaders jersey of the UCI World Cup, the winner of the first round, Milan-San Remo, just a couple of weeks ago, and that looks very much like Wilfred Peters again trying to get across the gap here. This man is riding an unbelievable race every time.
Absolutely flying across.
Every time something misses out and he doesn't feel that it's quite right for the Mapei squad, he shoots himself across the gap, and this looks like a much more serious split once again in the front of the race.
Well, it's certainly a big one, and Peters, sitting on the nose of his saddle there, has dragged himself across to join the leaders. Here he is. This is Johan Museo, number 3, who's also got on. It was Museo, Paul, I think, who came across the gap.
In fact, it looked like Peters, but it was Museo who saw the danger there, and he slipped across the gap there. A good move by him, following Van den Broek, who's up at the front now. This leading group is about 8 riders at the head of the race. And once again, number 23, Rolf Sorensen, has got himself into a very good position. 241 there is Michael van Haak from the Tonne squad. And most of the big stars here. And interesting, though, to see that Erik Zabel has got himself into the leading group of the race so far.
Still, it is attempting to split up here as we've got Rabobank and TVM on the attack. Zabel beginning to look very good and very impressive here as he looks for the wheels to mark. But Museo, and as Paul said earlier, they're beginning to call him the new Line of Flanders, and for good reason. And let me just quickly run through his results here in the Tour of Flanders. He won the race last year. He had time out in 97, but then he was 3rd in 96. He won in 95. He was 2nd in 94. He won in 93. And that's the sign. He was 2nd in 1991. So Johan Museo has always enjoyed this event and always seems to rise to the occasion in it.
Rolf Sorensen also rises to the occasion. Daniel Nardello slipping back through the group there just to take a quick look at who is in the rest of the field with him, and he makes a good chance for him to look and see that there are already 3 riders from Mapei in this group. I do think, though, in fact, one Mapei rider, a serious member of the team, has missed this group, Phil. In fact, I haven't seen Michele Bartoli in this leading group of riders.
Neither have I. And Daniela Nardello was up here a while back as well. I caught sight of him. But the Rabobank team are beginning to look very, very dangerous here. They're attacking all the time. They've got a few riders up here in this front group with Sorensen and Den Bakker and Zeberg. But there's still no coordination, Paul. They're just taking rushes at the front and nobody's helping each other. It's just a free-for-all out there. It's fantastic racing.
This is the way it's been really for the last 60 kilometres. Nobody, in fact, has launched an attack. This is looks very much like it's one of the Rabobank men who's come out there. It's Mark Wouters, the Belgian rider on the Rabobank squad, who came out there.
Well, there's another name. I didn't spot him, but Wouters was in the moves earlier. He's now come back and having another go. This might be a softener for some other Rabobank rider just behind him. They've got a very strong team here.
Obviously hoping to take the sting out of the counter-attacks and set something up for Rolf Sorensen, who's done a lot of work to whittle down and put pressure on the race so far. Mark Wouters now has been an excellent rider for Belgium. He turned professional quite a few years ago for the Lotto squad back in 1991. So he's an experienced pro, and then he switched across and raced for Word Perfect for a couple of years before that team then became Novell and then passed on to the Rabobank squad, which has been looked after by Jan Raas.
Under the 20 kilometres to go, just 12 miles from the finish, and there's still a lot of riders here dreaming of victory in the Tour of Flanders 1999 style, including last year's winner, Johan Museu, who probably never dreamt he would ever reach the condition to ride this race competitively again. And he's done that, and he's ridden so far brilliantly today.
Another good name in that group as well, Peter van Pietegem in the light grey jersey, sitting very close to the back, being attentive. And he too would severely love to win this race. He's won on 2 occasions Het Volk, which is almost a mini version of the Tour of Flanders, but it's 60 kilometres shorter than this event, 40 miles shorter in total, only 200 kilometres. Today, these riders facing 265 kilometres with 16 very difficult climbs. A lot of work is being done for Mapei by Daniel Nardello, and they're obviously trying to set it up now for the big attack, Phil, which I'm sure has to come on the slopes of the Mur de Grammont.
It's got to. We're into the outskirts now of Gerardsbergen. 18.9 kilometres to go to the finish. They've pedalled now for 251 kilometres and a few metres, and now they're gathering for the climb. When they leave Gerardsbergen, there's only one way out for the Tour of Flanders. It's over the cobbles of the Muur de Grammont.
Small misty rain starting to fall now. You can see the tyre marks that the bikes are starting to leave on the road there. That's going to make it quite slippy as Nardello moves to the back of the group. You can see also the confirmation of the riders in this group. Gabriele Colombo is in the group as well for Italy.
No, as you say, Paul, no Bartoli.
No Bartoli, he's obviously missed out. Now, that's going to make Johan Museo feel quite happy because he's not going to have to chase his own teammate. Even though they ride on the same squad, there has to be a certain amount of rivalry, and looking back down the road there, that group seems to have disappeared completely.
And this group has got rather gaining in confidence now. There is the cool Museo, as he just tracks riders through in the line. He knows this approach now so well to the wall. The crowd know that it's so often proven to be the springboard to victory for many, many riders, but it's not all over the top of the Muur. You still have to go on to the Bosberg, which itself is usually a doer struggle amongst the survivors of the Tour, and then we race into the finish at Muurbeker. It's been a great race, this one today. We're now into the streets of Gerardsbergen. So often the scene of big-time bike races, this town.
Well, this time last year, Johan Museo was already alone in the lead by about 45 seconds over the rest of the group. Today, I wonder if he's got the strength in his legs to launch an attack like he did just 12 months ago on the crest of a wave, the greatest form he's had for many seasons. And this year, trying to fight back after 12 months almost out of competition. There you can see right up in front of the riders the top of the Muur, and that's where they have to drag themselves up to. It's a new approach over the last couple of years to the Muur de Grammont. They go straight through the town. They used to actually go around the town first and then turn left onto the slopes of the climb. I think this makes it a lot more difficult. You drag up towards the right-hand turn where the cobblestones start, and then once you reach what used to be the summit of the Muur de Grammont, you take a right turn and go on even further up to the top by the chapel.
Right, and Eric Zabel is going to be the man who will cross Gerardsbergen in first place, the champion of Germany. Twice a winner of Milan-San Remo and the big winner of last year as well, as he now heads up with Peter van Petegem taking close order on his wheel. Sorensen is also right there too, and the white jersey on the far right of the World Cup leader, Andre Schmil, who's also always ridden well in this event.
I have to say, Zabel looking very comfortable there for a man many regard as being a mere sprinter. He really is taking this race in his stride. He rode strongly up there. He's riding to the front of the group. He knows the course. All of these riders now realizing that they are reaching the very difficult, crucial part of the game. At the top of this climb, there's just 16 kilometers or 10 miles left to go to the finish. And I have to say, Zabel is looking pretty cool.
1,000 metres of cobblestones as well. That's a kilometre. Now they're all packing. Is anybody going to find the strength to go? Sorensen on the far side. Van Petegem riding a superb Tour of Flanders, leading at the front here now as they all just dream of what they're going to do. And on the right of the picture, Johan Museo looks over his shoulder, but the Rabobank here in number anyway are looking pretty hot. They've got a couple of riders up here now, but still Van Petegem as they swing onto the Muur. 20%, 1 in 5, and there's been a crash, and what a pile-up. Vandenbroek has gone down again. This time he's taken a couple of the Rabobank team riders with him, and let's have another. And there is Andre Schmil has been delayed. Well, this is amazing.
Well, I can't see what happened there. Museo has gone with Van Petegem. Yes. They took advantage of that crash that went down there. And once again, Vandenbroek looked to me to be the rider who went down in first place. Van Petegem has flown, and right on his wheel is the new Lion of Flanders, Johan Museo.
Now, has he got the final few ounces of strength to carry him to victory here? Because he's gritting his teeth on the tail of Van Petegem. Van Petegem looks strong today.
Well, I tell you what, Museo is in difficulty here, Phil. Look at his face. He's really pulling himself inside out. He knows he's got to stay on this wheel. Van Petegem looks very calm and collected, and there's a gap. This is the first time, I think, in his career Museo has been put into difficulty on the slopes of the Muur de Grammont, and it looks as if he's going to get blown away by Van Petegem, but he's digging deep and trying to stay just on the slipstream of the man in front.
Van Petegem looks brilliant, but you have to admire Johan Museo. You don't really see this rider suffer like this. He will not allow Van Petegem to go. He knows if he can limit his losses at this point, then he will go clear together with him over the top. But it just shows you, Paul, even a man of Museo's ability even when he has to, he knows how to suffer.
Well, he knows how to suffer. He's learned how to suffer on these climbs of Belgium. This is the last kick up to the summit by the chapel now. And Museo, last year, alone in victory on this way towards the finish line. Today, chasing Peter van Petegem, a fellow Belgian, and he knows he has to pull himself back into the race. Van den Broek just went through, so he recovered very well indeed. But you can see the difference in the speed of the chase.
Ouch, this is the only word you can use here, because this is hurting all of them. Van den Broek must have got up like a scalded rabbit there, because he's come right up through this group and he's leading the charge. So another look at the crash here. Watch for the first rider down. Well, I think it was Van den Broek. I think he fell against the Rabobank riders, Paul. He seemed to be falling on the outside.
It looks to me as if, again, he went down in first place there. The front wheel came away from him and he leaned onto, I think, Rolf Sorensen there, and the man who got caught out at the back. Let's have a look at it from a different angle and see what it looks like. You can see there, just in the front there, in fact, it's definitely Van den Broek who goes down first, and I think his arm goes across to get the Rabobank rider, which was Sorensen, and Schmiel just had nowhere to go.
Yeah, Nardello delayed, poor André Schmiel down. And Van den Broek there remounted and being pushed back into the fray, but he's done a good job because he's best of the rest right now as we rejoin the two leaders over the top now of the Muur, racing as fast as they can to get to the Bosberg, which isn't too far away, and neither's the finish now.
Well, what a great recovery there by Johan Museo. He realised, he knew that this was a great attack by Van Petegem. Van Petegem has had great form recently. He's just recently won the 3 days of Lapana, so he's got good condition. And the thing is, the way he's riding now, Johan Museo has got a great chance of victory because he's the man who's won this race 3 times before, and he's the man who's got the brain to win.
Well, the group is starting to reform behind. And is this Bartley here?
It is. I don't know where he's
come
from. He was nowhere, and there's Chiandri too. They've obviously leaped across the gap from behind. They were more than a minute behind at the bottom of the Muur de Grammont, and Bartley, realising the danger, has leapt across there to the chase group now with Max Chiandri.
Well, Max must have done a pretty strong ride himself over the cobbles of the Muur, and he's come across with Bartley, and Max is a sort of Italian, isn't he? Even though he was born in Britain, he lives in Italy and his first language is Italian. Sharing a drink there with a rival, but both friends at the moment as they chase what is the common enemy. And I'm not sure in Bartley's case whether that's Museo or Van Petegem.
Well, I'm not sure how he's going to react now because Bartley will realise very shortly that his man, Johan Museo, is in the lead and he will not chase him. I don't think he's that kind of rider.
I don't either.
He's got the great respect that all true champions have, and he'll give Johan Museo the chance to stay clear and the chance to a crack at a 4th victory in this event. But it's going to be difficult because I have to say, Museo, let's not forget 12 months out of competition. It's very difficult indeed to bring yourself right back to the top of the sport. Although Museo has done it, but look at that, the gap's only 16 seconds.
He's at the top of the sport, but by the very standard that Johan sets himself, he might feel he's not quite there yet. But to return literally from what appeared to be at one stage a very serious injury, to come to be in what might well prove to be the winning move here now in the Tour of Flanders, says an awful lot for Johan Museo.
Actually, that group has come back pretty smartly
They're
behind.
closing.
We're at the foot now of the 16th climb. There's an attack by Van den Broek. So Van den Broek has come out of that group, just under the banner now, and he's trying to ride across to the leading group of 2.
Well, we can't be far now from the actual climb of the Bosberg, so that may be why Van den Broek has decided the chase group is not going quick enough. And this man has a wonderful turn of speed and determination when he goes. Remember how he won Het Volk? He had so much strength in those legs, and now looks as though it's going to be Van den Broek and Van den Broek alone who is going to catch up with the 2 leaders of the Ronde van Vlaanderen, and that is Museo and Van Petegem. Let's have a look at the attack again. He came from about 4 or 5 men back, and look at the heads on the others. They watch him and they don't even react at all. So that was a great move by Van den Broek, and we're on the Bosberg.
1.3 kilometres, 12% at the steepest part, and the pace on the front is being set by Peter van Petegem. Johan Museo now realises Petegem is extremely strong. He's seen his back wheel all the way up the Muur de Grammont, so he will just try and survive and let his Belgian compatriot set the pace. But this man we're looking at now, a French-speaking Belgium, in fact not too far away from Armentières as his home in Ploegstert, is bridging the gap to the 2 leaders.
Well, I've nothing but 100% admiration for Johan Museo, who's up there with the lead, but he's going to have trouble on his hands now because this young flyer is climbing very steadily on the last climb of the Tour of Flanders. That's if you don't count the little hill up towards the finish. As he comes up now, Van den Broek is going to encounter the 2 front men. And that is going to be 3 Belgian riders in the lead. And this is like the good old days of the Tour of Flanders, they will tell you.
The Belgians are going to go mad when they see this, but don't forget that group is not too far behind. 15 seconds was the last time check to the group, containing some pretty serious contenders as well. Rolf Sorensen is in the chase group, as is Michele Bartoli. And now's the time when Van den Broek has got to put the hammer down, because before those 2 riders can recover from the climb, he has to make contact, otherwise he'll be left in no man's land.
Well, that's exactly where he is right now, because I thought he was gaining at such a rate he would have been on them on the climb in the Bosberg, but they've gone over the top and they haven't relinquished too much of that gap at all. But I think Van den Broek is riding clear of the rest, but he's going to have to make one big effort. This is the psychological gap, isn't it, Paul? Now, you're nearly on, but suddenly you don't seem to get any closer.
Well, after 6 hours in the saddle, it's really difficult to close down the last few meters. And let's not forget, Van den Broek has had another fall in his day, because not only did he fall at the bottom of the Molenberg, he fell off at the Muur de Grammont. So he's having to fight back all the time from these incidents. 6 seconds is his disadvantage over the 2 leaders, and the group with Bartoli in it is 22 seconds back. So this race is far from over.
And he's on, so it's definitely far from over, because he's just made the gap. I was thinking he may have been crossing that gap purely on adrenaline after the fall, and it was about to run out, but it looks as though he's found his legs and he's now latched on. A glance over his shoulder and another one to make sure he's got nobody coming up behind. And we've got 3 Belgian riders in the lead in the Tour of Flanders, and that could be a great result for them today.
Certainly is. You have to go back a long way through the history books to see 3 Belgians at the front of this race, which they regard as their own. As Frank Van den Broek said to me just before the start, this race is like our own World Championships. It is so important for the Belgians, which is why there are something like 500,000 spectators turn out to witness the race from the side of the road. And Van den Broek now sitting at the back of the leading group, because he needs to recuperate, because that was a pretty violent effort he made to come away from the chase group on the Bosberg, make the junction with the 2 leaders. But if they want to stay clear, he's got to start working with them pretty soon.
Oh, Van Petegem had a great 7th place in Milan-San Remo. And so, you know, he could well be up there in the World Cup here. It would all depend on the finishing position of André Schmil, who'd have to be in the first 6, I think, to stop him taking the lead overall.
Not many people would have bet on this combination of riders being at the front after the Tour of Flanders. I have to say, I don't think many people would have put a sensible bet on Johan Museeuw. It may well have been a bet as they go under the 10-kilometre banner, a bet of emotion, hoping that Johan Museeuw would return to the form that he had 12 months ago. But this is quite remarkable to see this man from Gistel, which is not too far away from the start in Bruges, coming to the front of the race in what has been a very difficult Tour of Flanders.
In fact, this year the race did pass Johan's house in the very early stages. It was too early to be in a leading group, I think. But yes, you're right, Paul. If this man wins today, he'll be fated like he's never been fated before, because I think it will be seen as one of his greatest victories. But look at this man, Jean-Luc Van den Broek's nephew, Frank Van den Broek. When Jean-Luc signed in for the team and they fell out and he left it, he must have known then what a talent this boy was.
I think he must have certainly known. He was trying to keep hold of him, and I think that's what the friction was caused about, because he was trying to keep him in the Lotto squad, and the Lotto squad didn't have the backup and didn't have the money to keep him on their role, on their ranking, because he is a great talent. He is a courageous rider. The fact that he bridged the gap after that crash on the Muur de Grammont and has still got the energy to attack these 2 great champions just goes to prove that he's trying to rip the race apart.
And with 8.7 kilometres to go, the motorbike's getting in the way there, but it doesn't matter, because Van den Broek has been put back in his place, at least for the moment. Johan Museeuw gone to the front, I think not so much to attack, to try and keep control of the speed here, because I think he really is in difficulty. There was a moment then I thought I was going to eat my words, Paul. I thought he was poised to attack.
I think Van den Broek is the strongest rider in this group, and Museeuw now realising he's got 2 very young challengers here, and he has got to ride sensibly. I don't think we'll see Museeuw trying to attack this group of 3 riders. He will just hope that he's got a little left for that sprint. He knows the sprint exceptionally well. He's been first over the line there 3 times in the past. He got beaten in the sprint in a very close finish with Gianni Bugno a couple of years ago, so he'll be casting his mind back to that, trying to run himself through this final few meters up to the finish line. And he'll be looking now at both Van den Broek and Van Petegem to see if there's any signs of weakness, any sign that he can take advantage of.
Well, the one thing possibly in his favour is there are 3 of them. If it had been just 2 riders, and then I think Museeuw would have finished second. But now he can use the tactic of confusion with 2 men around him. And we'll see. But first of all, of course, they've got to get down to the finish clear of the group. And at the moment, it's looking very good. It's now out to 24 seconds, back to the fourth rider on the road. And of course, Bartoli is in there and will not be countering this move now.
He certainly won't. Vandenbroek not scared to go to the front and do his share of the pacemaking. These three riders, they all know each other exceptionally well. They've ridden many races together, and now they are three Belgians looking for a victory in the race to them, which is more important more often than not than the World Championships. Van Petegem is looking excellent at the moment. Vandenbroek recently won the time trial in the 3 days of La Panna, and the overall victory was taken by Van Petegem, who's on the front. So those two guys are in excellent form right now, and they really are the men on the crest of a wave. But I really emotionally would like to see Johan Museeuw come off with the win here.
And so I think fair to say the majority of Belgium too, certainly the Flanders area for Johan. But Van Petegem, also a native of the circuit, while a little bit further out for Frankie Vandenbroek. But the three of them, well, any one of them deserves victory. Remember, 2 falls that we know of for Frankie, and he's got up from them all and put himself in this position. Van Petegem, twice the winner of Het Volk, has announced quite openly this is the race he wants to win, and the man who's won it 3 times already, Johan Museeuw. 3 very worthy riders in front, with just on 25 seconds now the time gap. And Museeuw constantly turning his head, checking out the riders, watching their every move. He's ready for somebody to go.
Well, the gap opened up again. Another couple of seconds, 26 seconds is the advantage they have over the group containing Michele Bartoli. And I have to wonder now what is going through the mind of Johan Museeuw on the front. A quick look there at Frank Vandenbroek, probably a few words of encouragement, encouraging him to do a little bit more work, hoping that he'll push his youthful enthusiasm a little too far and fatigue himself before the finish, because Museeuw is probably having to pull every trick out of the book now if he wants to win. And there's a big organised chase behind in that group, and it's all the orange jerseys of Rabobank on the front.
And nobody to help them now, but at least there are 3 of them at least in this group, and they're trying to put things right for Rolf Sorensen, as the Rabobanks are left alone now to chase down these 3 Belgian riders out front. The one thing that could go in favour of the Rabobank behind is that these 3 will slow down as the finish approaches, as they start to work out their finishing sprint.
But what a combination. Vandenbroek, Museeuw, Van Petegem. All great Belgian riders, all looking to win the Belgians Classic, the Tour of Flanders. Johan Museeuw now must be racking his brains out, wondering if he's got the strength left. I don't think even Johan Museeuw could have expected to be at the front in the final kill of the Tour of Flanders. But I tell you what, Phil, they may well not stay close to the finish, because this is a real concerted effort here coming from the Rabobank riders, because Marcus Seberg is in there in this group, and Marcus Seberg has got a very good sprint. So the Rabobank riders in that chase group behind will really put the hammer down and try and pull these 3 back into the fold. So they've got to keep working and not think too much about how they're going to handle their sprint at the finish.
Van Petegem in the grey jersey, 2 victories his way this year already. He won the overall in the 3 days of La Panna, the race that lost the stage when the police swooped on all of the Map A team, stopped the race and arrested them. Thankfully they were all released without any further investigation, but the race finished with a victory overall for Van Petegem, who also won what we used to call the Grand Prix Harold Baker E3 race, Paul.
Yep, I'm not sure why they call it the Grand Prix E3 anymore. It was named E3 because it zigzags across the E3 motorway, which now, unfortunately, has been changed to the E17 due to European rules.
Okay, so he won the Grand Prix E17 this year.
Well, you've got to make way for a bit of inflation, but there's a serious chase coming on behind from the Rabobank riders there, and if they can bring it all back together, it will give Marcus Seberg a great crack at the victory. But Van Petegem now accelerates, and we're almost in the streets of Meerbeek. 4 kilometres left to go to the finish, and Museeuw, I have to say, has been using a monstrous gear throughout this race today. He doesn't have the suppleness that he had last year, and he may well be able to use that strength to his advantage in the very difficult sprint up to the finish line, because that final 500 metres up to the line in Meerbeek really is unbelievable.
23 seconds, the chase has chipped 3 seconds off, but the race is drawing to a close now, decision time soon. Van Petegem, by the way, 5th in this race last year when Johan Museeuw was the winner, and he would like to do better than that this time around. Well, he will do better than that if he stays away. At least he'll get 3rd.
Every time they see these yellow banners on the road, they know they're getting so much closer to the finish line in Meerbeek. And Museeuw looking down at his gears there, looking down to make sure that everything is fine. There's going to be no problems with his machine, because he's now thinking, I would say in the back of his mind that, yes, I have got a chance to win here. I have got a crack at taking a 4th victory, but I'm going to have to do something about these 2 young riders. Van Petegem, not quite so young. He's 29 years of age now. Van den Broek a little younger at 24. But Phil, there's the big organisation in the Rabobank squad. Now they've got to give everything to try and put Marcus Seberg into a position to win.
When you see them chasing as they are now, it's hard to imagine that they actually missed out on the breakaway there. I think there's five riders possibly here in this working group. And now coming in towards the 3 kilometre to go banner. And sooner or later, will somebody have a stab to go for it in the hope the other 2 hesitate just long enough? Watch out here, Van Petegem is tightening his shoe straps here.
Doesn't want to make any mistakes when he comes up to that final slope up to the line. But you know, I think the group is starting to close down pretty rapidly. They've moved the neutral service vehicles out from behind this leading group of 3 riders, and there's the banner they've been looking for. 3 to go. That's around about 4.5 minutes of energy, 4.5 minutes of effort before they get to the finish line. They're keeping the gap clear now behind these 3 leaders, Museo, Van Petegem and Van den Broek. And I have to say that it's a great job is being done by the riders from Rabobank behind, because they're starting to nail it back. And Van den Broek looking back down the straight roads to try and get an idea of how far behind, and it's down to about 15 seconds.
It's not far at all. This is a great pursuit here, team time trial style by the Dutch Rabobank team. These 3 haven't missed a turn. They haven't tried to attack one another. Goodness knows where this is leading us. Which one can possibly pull it off? I think the whole nation would love to see Museo. One has a feeling that Van den Broek really, or Van Petegem must do it today. There's the chase in the helicopter. No friends here at all. Michele Bartoli having a nice trip towards the finish, and could well clean up in this sprint if he gets this nice quiet ride.
I have to say, if they do pull it all back together, although Marcus Seberg sitting there in 4th position is a very good sprinter indeed, because of the fact that Bartoli's been able to sit on for so many kilometres, he could be the man to take advantage. And that again, once more, proves the strength of a team like Team Mappé, to have the strength in numbers when you come down to the final kilometres of a race like this. 2 kilometres left to go to the finish.
Museo lying off the 2 of them now as he watches just what they're trying to do. I wonder if he's decided now, I've done my share of the work. 22 seconds the gap. There is enough room there for a little bit of cat and mouse, but not a lot. Otherwise that break will be on them. And here they come. They're now under the 2. You know, it must be inside 20 seconds, Paul, as André Schmil also moves up towards the front now to have a little look at how the chase is getting on. He needs a top 6 finish now to stay leader of the World Cup. Van den Broek is trying a big turn of speed here now, and immediately on him goes Van Petegem, and the wily Museo never missed a pedal rev.
What a poker player. He now knows what he has to do. He knows these 2 riders. Because of that attack by Van den Broek, he realises that Van den Broek now is not so confident for the sprint. And the reaction coming from Van Petegem, who will gain a certain amount of confidence. And so what Museo is going to do is going to play these 2 riders against each other.
They're gambling, Paul, because they must have lost 6 or 7 seconds with this freewheel over that chase down. That group now must be only 15 seconds behind them. As we start to approach the kilometre to go banner, they're going to lose more time here now. Van den Broek doesn't want to lead out. Museo certainly doesn't. He's going to have to gauge his sprint to perfection if he's going to have the legs once at the end of this straight road. And in fact, easing away is Van Petegem. There's no reaction from Museo. He's gambling here. He's forced the younger rider to go for it. Now that takes cool and class.
Well, don't forget, he's won this race 3 times. He's saying to Van den Broek, don't worry, I don't care. I've won 3 times before. You've never won. You've got to make the effort. You've got to close it down. Van den Broek has done it very well, but Van Petegem didn't insist. In fact, he's sitting up. He's waiting for the other 2 riders to come back up to him. He wasn't sure. He didn't have the confidence he could go clear to the finish.
It was a move he didn't really want to stop, but the gap was there. He had to give it a go. Museo proved he could hold his cool. Now at the top of this hill, it will all be over, and they're going to slow right down, I think now. Museo can see the finish. He's won here 3 times before. Van Petegem rides in the middle, his head turning from left to right and right to left. They're moving right across to the barriers now. It looks though Van den Broek is going to lean on both of them here as they keep Johan Museo tight on the barriers now. Museo is being forced to lead out. Van Petegem finding a little bit claustrophobic in the centre there, but coming clear. Museo, I think, is a beaten man here. The legs aren't quite sharp enough. Van den Broek is going to take on Peter Van Petegem, but I think this is the year of Peter Van Petegem. He is clear of the 2 of them, and he gets a well-deserved victory, and I'm not surprised he's pleased about that.
Well, a great ride by the Belgians, Phil, I have to say, and it's very rare you see a sprint like that. Those 3 guys lined it up like a drag race, and it was going to be an acceleration, and the strongest man would win, and that was Van Petegem, as Michele Bartoli leads the rest of the group across the line for 4th place.
So we were right about one thing. If the race had come back together again, it looks though Bartley would have taken the victory. Mark Wouters, that was finishing. He's a little bit off the back of the break now. Let's have a look at that sprint again here. Museo did everything possible and it didn't work out for him, but that's the way it goes. Third is a brilliant result for Johan Museo. First is what Van Petegem has always dreamed about, and this time he's got it. He knew he had it right here. He just had to keep the rhythm going. And poor Frank Vandenbroek, well, second isn't bad, is it, when you've had two falls, and he had to come up to these two when they went clear just before the Bosberg climb. There's no doubt about the winner today, and that was Van Petegem.
What a great performance for the Belgians as well. First, second and third in their own classic, and Van Petegem will certainly be feted by all of Belgium tomorrow, because that was a magnificent victory, and it's great to see Johan Museo coming back to the top of the sport after such a difficult year out, fighting his way back with an awful lot of courage and determination.
He's probably going to feel rather disappointed at this moment in time because he's such a winner on the way. But you know, the crowd will appreciate just how well he's come back. He has to feel pleased when he looks back at hindsight at this event. And Van Petegem, well, he sacrificed the Hepvolk this year. He's won that twice, and I bet you he'd have traded all two victories in Hepvolk just for one in the Tour of Flanders. It's the one that all Belgian riders want to win, and now all he's got to do is go and salute the crowd and enjoy the rewards of victory in the Tour of Flanders.
Frank, another tough day at the Tour of Flanders, and it ended up being a real classic once again.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird race. Like, big groups would go off, and then Mapai would chase, and a big group would go off. But I mean, it was yeah, class. I mean, the cobbles were muddy and wet, and it was hard all day. I mean, hard. I don't think we ever sat up too long.
Before the start, you said to me your favourite was going to be George Hincapie. George did an awful lot of work in the early part of the race. Do you think he was a bit too nervous? He wanted to do too well?
No, I mean, it was good he was in that first move with 25 guys, and he was just sitting on, just waiting. And then after that, he was in a couple other moves. You know, when the big guys go, you have to go with it and stuff like that. And then me and Marty were there, but then we crashed on like the Eichenberg, and so we lost contact to the main group. George was already in front there, so I don't know what happened after that. You know, we never caught back on.
I'll tell you what happened after that. Van Petegem won the race at the end of the day, and Johan Museo finished third. What do you think of that?
Who got second?
Second was Vandenbroek, but Museo was up there all the way towards the end, and that's quite a remarkable performance by a man who's been out of the sport for nearly 12 months.
When you're born a champion, you're always a champion, and he's definitely a captain.
What about Frankie Andreu? Another ride in the Tour of Flanders, another day down to the finish here in Meerbeek.
Yeah, I made it, but a little disappointed that I crashed in that Eichenberg, which was kind of critical because, I mean, once you lose, you know, that kind of time, it's hard to make back up. But, yeah, I mean, we're trying.
It's a hard way to carry on with your apprenticeship, riding races like the Tour of Flanders.
Yeah, Tour of Flanders is a great race, so I think we did good. I don't even know what happened. Do you have?
Well, George Hincapie rode well. The race was won, in fact, by Van Petegem, second Vandenbroek, and third Johan Museo.
Well, those are all guys that we thought were going to be up in the front, and I had bad luck today. I was going up the hill and my derailleur ripped off, and so I didn't get to help out George as much as I really wanted to. But George looked like he was going really well, and the team was rode really well till whatever I saw. So I'm happy with what we did. My goal is to finish today, and I did that, and hopefully George is up in the top 10 to 20 or so.
Frank, deux questions. C'est toujours très difficile de faire. Well, Frank, it's always difficult to finish second in a great classic. You've had a lot of bad luck today, though.
Ouais, je veux dire, j'ai fait deux chutes,
I have to say it's two very bad crashes. I lost a lot of ground on the Molenberg. At the bottom of the Mur de Grammont, it was even worse. I had to make a lot of extra efforts. Otherwise, I think if I hadn't crashed, I could have attacked in the Mur de Grammont. The crash at the Mur de Grammont was the most dangerous. Yeah, I had to use an awful lot of force to try and drag myself back to the group in the front. If I hadn't crashed, I think I'd have been a lot quicker and maybe I could have won alone. It's been a great day for Frank Vandenbroek and also for Belgian cycling. Well, for me, it wasn't such a hard day. I was in a fantastic day, great condition today. And for Belgian cycling, it's definitely our race.
So, well, second place isn't bad, is it, for Frank van den Broek? No doubt, though, the man who was really on form at the end and inspired and drawn to that finishing line was the other Belgian rider from TVM, Peter van Petegem. A great victory for him, and a terrific applause here for Johan Museeuw, who has come back big time here with a third place finish, and everybody enjoying it. And the new line of Flanders, really, I think, the man who today has finished in third place. And a crowd bigger than usual, enjoying the spectacle of another tough Ronde van Vlaanderen. The race goes on. Well, everybody agrees that was one of the finest Tour of Flanders, and the great days are back for Belgian cyclists. 1, 2, 3 in this event. They haven't done that since 1982. And what about Johan Museeuw? The great man is back. He's now won this race 3 times. He's had 2 seconds. He's now had 2 thirds. And Peter van Petegem, well, he's realised his dream. Until the next time, I'm Phil Liggett for Paul Sherwen saying goodbye.